Hello, welcome everyone once again to Runeterra Academy to another Legends of Runeterra tournament. I'm TDS. I was here once 2 weeks ago. I think it was like that. So welcome back, welcome back to see me again with Tom once again. So not much has changed since then, at least in terms of who I'm casting with. So I'm really excited to be able to come back here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you back, TDS. Missed you last week, but we were able to hang out with Red Nick again and watch a lot of really interesting games. And last week we saw a lot of different stuff, not stuff that we saw like previously throughout the course of these weekly tournaments. And going into this week, we're going to be seeing even more new stuff. Based off the
Okay,
deck lists that were submitted. And I mean, 2 weeks ago you mentioned dragons a lot, I think, and I was a little
I love them.
skeptical, but I went and played like 4 games of dragons like today, and all of them I won. So it was pretty nice. So I'm a big fan of dragons again. Like I'm a believer now. I think that deck has a lot of strength and not really a lot of weaknesses, at least that I could tell. But
Okay,
I'm excited. I hope that people bring it out more, but we will have to get through some old stuff for this first matchup. TDS going into game one, we have Starset and Win Exploit. Starset bringing in Warlords, Draven Scion discard, and Zoe Vi. So Warlords we've seen before, obviously
yeah,
Draven Scion pretty powerful right now since the new Into the Bandlewood expansion.
one
But
of the
Zoe
ones that I'm most excited to see, the Draven Scion.
Draven Scion. I was gonna bring up the Zoe Vi is what I'm looking forward to because I don't think I've
Okay,
ever seen this one. It looks pretty strong. I mean, Zoe obviously an interesting card, could win or lose games for you. Um, Vi though, Vi's kind of been interesting. She's never really been top tier, but maybe these Bandlewood cards can change that.
yeah, I think that she kind of fits the role of like a band-aid champion where if you find the correct composition to feed her in, she may shine really effectively. So even though sometimes or most of the times she has not been picked, I think that maybe with Zoe, like you're saying, it can finally find value with the champions, the cards that are surrounding her. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's both Warlords this time around to start, so it's going to be interesting to see the mirror match.
Yeah, and it looks like this first game we're gonna be going into will be the Warlords from Win Exploit, and it looks like the Warlords as well
Yeah.
from Starset. So just a little bit of a mirror matchup here. Getting the our mandatory matchup over with.
Yeah, it's something that happens. It's something that must happen a lot of the time. So I'm glad that we're taking it out on the first game, and luckily this means that later on we're going to get much more variety. But I think that warlords against warlords can just, even though I think mentioning a lot of the potential RNG is bad, it truly feels like whoever can set up their severe action first gets a really nice positioning to being able to win the game later on.
Yeah, and part of that also in these mirror matchups is looking out for those merciless hunters. The last thing you want is for your Action, your Sivir to be bundled up as yet another gift for Renekton. And Starset, the first to get the champion out on the board, and he does have cards that can potentially protect this Action, but Win Exploit has quite a few cards to threaten it. Obviously, he has the Merciless Hunter, but he also has the Bright Steel Protector in hand to potentially block action with another card. Definitely not a great place to be in.
Yeah, I think that for starters right now, Starset probably in a much more comfortable spot. He still has a couple of good cards play out from his end. So I think just testing the waters right now, seeing what he can achieve with the action, apart from just beginning to empower the champion. And I think for Win Exploit, just trying to weather the storm and be able to get to a powerful turn. He may even force the fight against the action to try and take it out, but I don't think he's going to be able to. There's
Yeah,
a potential here to defend it.
I think going for the kill here on the Action is definitely the right move. You've only spent the Bright Steel Protector to try and threaten it, and now you're forcing at least the the sharp sight that we use to protect it. There's obviously other ways that you can try and do that, but at least he's burning these resources now because you have to get these cards off the board. The Action, not so much as the Sivir, but both of them are definitely cards that you don't want to let stay around.
Yeah.
And as we get into this next round, we're going to see Starset forgo dropping the Sivir, which I think is definitely the correct move. since obviously we know that Win Exploit has this Merciless Hunter that he's just used.
Yep, I think that just baiting out the potential Merciless Hunter for the action can be much more deal, especially because Sivir you don't need to play it out so early on. It's nice to get the
Mm-hmm.
stacking out, but it's not necessary to put it out just like that. So I think that just waiting, giving the baiting out something potentially can be much more valuable in the long run. And if you're able to also weaken the hand of the opponent in the meanwhile, it's always valuable.
Yeah, very, very true. You know, Sivir's level up obviously being deal like you've dealt 35 damage throughout the whole game. So as a 4 cost card, you're not really doing 35 damage by then. So definitely, like you mentioned, safer to keep it in hand until you can actually utilize that level up passive. And we're gonna see actually Starset go for a Waking Sands, and we saw this I think last time you were on. I was very perplexed why people were using the Waking Sands on defense, since it is such a offensive focused card. You know, a 5/2
Yeah.
ephemeral blocking. Obviously, you're not going to get the most out of it, except for killing a potentially really beefy unit.
Yep, we were kind of interested in what the plan was behind that. I think that that time it helped to weaken the hand as much as possible from the enemy, so it ended up
Mhm.
working out. But I think that it's a really determined situation that if it works, it's great. If not, it's not the end of the world. And this forcing the combat out so that the action doesn't die, I think that that could be the most ideal here.
Yeah, and it's denying the strike from the action, so preventing it from potentially fast forwarding that that Warlord's Horde countdown. And now Action's actually going to level up from Starset though, since the single combat counts as targeting an ally. But definitely an interesting play. I think saving the board, I guess, was what Starset really wanted to do, and sacrificing that Sandstone Charger is probably the the most efficient thing he could do, I guess.
Yep, I think for an ephemeral card, it most more than likely was more helpful, felt helpful to just take it out like that, and especially because he was at the board at the edge of being able to level up the action. I think that that also finds a lot of value for him. Even though the other action also survives from Wings exploit, he's still trying to stack up to the level up. So I think that right now starts
Mm-hmm.
it with a clear advantage with the level up, trying to get his action to a good position, which he is now. And I think that if now he goes for the Silver, he may end up getting into a good spot.
Yeah, and the only downside now though is that Winexploit has used that Aegis, so he has another attack. He has the rally, and Action is still vulnerable. But the upside to this also, like you mentioned, is the Action is leveled up, so there's really not that much benefit from keeping him out. It's only an accelerant for counting down this Warlord's Horde. So getting that burst card for whether you're giving your champions 2/2 and spell shield, you're drawing something. Um, but not losing him, or losing him isn't that big of an issue now because you've already obviously got the level up off.
Yep, I think that for that reason alone, I think that
Wow.
it's fine to put it okay.
Yeah. So that was actually a really good drop from Starset. I think he used the tattered banner from the Penitent Squire to give Sivir Challenger. So now she can pretty much just attack for free, not having to worry about really anything, being able to potentially become really beefy and survive her attack.
Yeah, I was thinking if he forces the attack onto the action to just eliminate the action with the Silver, but I like taking away the higher value here, especially because the action doesn't prove as much of a threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like obviously challenge the action, like getting rid of that off the board would be worthwhile. Um, but now you're just forcing him to block with it, and like that would force him to like either block with it and lose the action anyways, or just eat that damage onto his Nexus. But
Yeah.
he will save it and actually get this full drop for the Radiant Guardian. So definitely a very good card to have right now for someone that's on the back foot, or hypothetically.
Yeah, having that potential to just defend, it's always ideal. Although now with the weekend onto the Silver, there may be an opportunity to look into trying to take the champion down. There's obviously not that much damage yet, but there's a good potential here to be able to. Although it started with a nice event.
Yeah, I think this Aegis is probably the best angle for Starset because obviously you need to keep the Sivir alive. You mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, obviously the Action is not the level up player, not the level, that's not the win condition. He's on a path towards that by buffing up the Sivir. But especially since he's already leveled up, there's no point to use anything to keep anything alive that's not the Sivir. The Sivir is how you're
Yeah.
going to end the game because all your other cards, like we see on the board right now, are 3 and 2 power respectively. They need to have quick attack. They need to have overwhelm. They need to have something to be able to close this game out. And the
Yeah,
way you do that is Sivir.
yeah, 100%. It all kind of just rallies into what Saber can do, and if she is strong enough, you can win the game. If not, it's harder to close it out, right? So, like you're saying, the win condition being this Saber, that's why it's much more valuable to keep it as safe as possible, and that's why I think it starts it going for the safe defense, even though it may burn a little bit on a potential for later on. It's more ideal to just be 100% sure that your Saber is not going to die here.
Yeah, and I was about to bring up the concerted strike has to come out here from Win Exploit. Like that's obviously the correct play is to clear the Sivir because the concerted strike is going to pop barrier and then kill Sivir with the next attack, and then you still get to play your attack, which is the
Yeah.
best part.
So it's practically having a second attack, an even better attack because you kill someone and then you attack.
And he's opting to pass here, which is really interesting.
So not forcing the attack.
I
So
maybe
now
he's
Sivir is.
baiting out the attack token. I mean, I don't know. I don't think Starset should attack here either. Like this is not the way to go because the when exploit can block with the Radiant Guardian, the Radiant Guardian should technically win, like not die and then be able to answer back onto the Sivir. You know, obviously there's the Absolver in hand for Starset to buff up this Sivir, but burning your attack token for like potentially to lose barrier on a turn where when exploit still has it is not the smartest play I think because obviously when exploit doesn't have the best cards in hand, but if he had something like a shape stone or two or something, he could be very easily survive this attack from Sivir and live to either kill the Sivir or just pop the barrier.
Yeah, it's kind of betting a lot on your opponent not having the right tools to answer, which I think sometimes may be okay, but I think that Starset was still in an okay enough spot that if both just pass, it will just benefit. I think Starset in the long run as well. Like
And
he
then
does end up getting the level up, which I think it's fine. But I think that even if you play it slowly, you still find value out of that.
and then the the concerted strike comes out, but it goes on to the Redeemer, the the 3/3 Demacia card. I feel like that still should have gone on to the Sivir there. Like you would have cleared the. Oh well, I guess it wouldn't because Sivir still does have spell shield. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's somewhere I guess.
I think it was kind of a bad it was a bad situation for Wing
hmm
Exploit because even if he wanted to try and deny the Sivir in some way, I don't think he has enough power in his hand to be able to pull it up, and I think that's why Starset bet on the attack, which I think we both agree. Even if he doesn't go for that, he probably can get value later on. But that is a nice risk that ends up netting a nice reward for the side of Starset.
And you know now we see two challengers. Obviously the Action with Challenger, the Sivir with Challenger. Unfortunately, these other two cards aren't going to gain it because the keywords only come out once the attack goes down. But they're all going to have spell shield, so there's nothing that can happen now for Win Exploit to try and like save this. The most he can do is just use this Sandstone Charger to save damage, but he's going to lose his whole board here this turn. He's going to have nothing going into turn 9. He's going to only have the Fleet Feather and whatever he can top deck. This is a very difficult game for him right now. Starset's basically just set up to win in the next 2 rounds.
Yeah, I think that started with a nice like he had a couple of nice developments that has made him be in a really nice spot. And Win Exploit sadly not being able to utilize the hand that he has been given effectively. I think that even though a couple of cards were really not that necessary, I think that he has been also not using them effectively. I think that being a little bit too hasty sometimes. So making the side of Starset much more stronger than it may have been in reality.
Very, very potential. Excuse me. Potentially, that what is going wrong for exploit right now. I mean, obviously he hasn't had excuse me. He had a really good opening hand, but as the game's gone on, Starset has drawn a lot more cards that he's needed. But as we move into these next two rounds, I mean, what does win exploit do to win? And pulling a sharp sight, unfortunately, I don't think is what's going to be his win condition. If he can find something out
This.
of this predict, maybe he can turn it around. But it's an
Mm,
action, so again, there's not enough damage for him to clear anything. He can't really risk attacking with the action because while he has the two shaped stones, something in Starset's hand would be able to potentially survive Action's attack and then turn around for the kill. And then even moving into the next turn, there's nothing in Win Exploit's hand that can stop an attack.
I think that if the Saber survives this, which I think it's more than likely, then in the next turn it's pretty much over. I really don't think that the action should the star set loses this, but it does get the Saber cleared up, which means that now at least he can buy a little bit more time. That I think it's not yet lethal with yeah, it's not yet lethal with just his cards. So right now, if he can find another point to defend, there may be a chance for win exploit in the next turns if he survives this.
Mm-hmm.
Now it is
I
lethal.
I think one thing that was interesting was that the Absolver had come out from excuse me, had come out from Starset earlier, but he decided to opt not to use the overwhelm part of it on that attack, which potentially could have given him a lot more damage onto the Nexus. But now we're going to see Starset open with an attack. He has his Absolver in hand. He could be going for Absolver into the overwhelm on one of these cards, and that should potentially give him the win. I mean, it obviously I think if he goes for Absolver into Redemption onto this Squire, it should be just game over.
Yeah, yeah. It seems to be. There's nothing to now defend.
Yeah.
It is. The attempt
Yeah.
to defend there from Win Exploit was nice, but it was at a point where it was hard, and he was even running out of cards, so it was going to be really hard to pull off. I think that the move to get rid of the Saver before was also really nice. He was able to buy himself a little bit of time, but with the difference in power already in the
Mm.
failed, it was going to be really hard at the end to pull it off. So credit to Starset. I think that he set himself up really well, particularly with that play with the Sivir where he utilized the barrier and then attacked, having also the spell shield on top of himself. So betting on Win Exploit, don't having anything in the hand, and then making full effectiveness out of that attack.
Yeah, when Exploit, like you mentioned, had the better angles. He played his cards really well, and I think that you mentioned, or excuse me, Starset. When Exploit tried to play that action, and I think he did the right move, challenging the Sivir to pull it off, and it did give him enough time. It just unfortunately came down to he had already burned a lot of resources to try and
Yeah.
survive until that point, and then Starset had already had everything set up for a potential win. He just needed to pull like one or two more cards for that lethal. So still a very good first match. Both players playing the war deck very very well, and I'm interested to see what decks we're going to get into for this next one. And
Ooh,
it looks like we're
Soy
gonna have
Bai.
that Vi. Yeah.
But and it's also going to be started with the set. I think it's set Poppy. So
Mhm. Yep.
also changing a little bit. Interesting to see now. No warlords. I'm really interested to see how this develops, particularly with what you're saying with the Zoe buy. If you are able to utilize the power of the Zoe effectively, this deck may shine really highly early on. And he also and when exploit gets the Zoe really early on to begin that stack.
Yeah, having the Zoe early on is very, very useful. But another card that you want to have is the Vi, because Vi only starts to get towards that level up condition if she's in hand or on board. So the later you pull her, the longer it's going to take to level her up. But the one upside is that this deck has a lot of like 1, 2, and 3 cost cards. So once you get the Vi, it shouldn't be too big of a hassle to get them out there. But as far as the rest of this is a very good start for Win Exploit. He obviously has to watch out for a lot of those cards in that Demacia region, the Sharp Sight that we see in Starset's hand, the single combat to potentially clear this Zoe. He wants to be able to keep this card alive as long as possible so that he can stay alive and stall out for the Vi or look for a win condition through some of these cards that he's pulling with the star charts and the invokes.
there may be a chance that he just tries to utilize cheap damage to threaten with the buy later on, right? So making so that when the buy comes out, she's going to be the win condition after so much cheap damage has been done. I would like to see if that's a possibility for win exploit, but I'm not sure if that's what he will try and look forward to.
Yeah, it's curious because obviously Zoe decks just have so much like potential. Like there's so many different angles you can take through. Like obviously with any invoke deck, just that there's so many different potential cards that you can pull that aren't originally in your deck that can change how you want to go for the win.
Yeah,
The moon glow is definitely interesting. Um, giving Zoe some extra health, giving her a spell shield is probably the best place to go currently, just because of the Demacia spells, the single combat, the sharps, like being able to potentially clear those cards. It still doesn't get her completely out of trouble. It just protects her from a potential like spell based clear. She obviously also watch out for sharp sight. But for the rest of this, I think he just goes for an open attack. I don't think he tries to use the Zoe. I think he just needs to keep her on board and keep playing cards.
unless he is well, he did buffer up, so at least like you're saying, he doesn't get the he's not going to get traded here. But I think that just going for the attack with the Zoe doesn't make that much sense, especially since you know that you can get blocked and not die while
Mm-hmm.
doing that. Just kind of risking the health that you already gave to the Zoe without really any need to, right?
And not even really need to, but like even you're not even gaining anything, like you mentioned. You're not getting the star chart. You're not getting chip damage. You're just losing this value that you've added to the card. Because now next turn, we see Starset giving the young witch the barrier, but he also has a Willow or Twin Disciples in hand. So even if he wanted to bait out the attack with just the young witch, he could have easily or baited out the block from Zoe and then used the Twin Disciples to give that young witch lethal on the Zoe.
Yeah.
But instead, we're gonna see the the stun come out from Win Exploit, which I think is probably the best choice he could have gone for.
Yeah, certainly denying the potential from the barrier, I really like that, and also any Enshin attack, just to make sure that there's no risk, even if just a little. I think that gets value here. So overall, the stun getting being used correctly, I think by Wing Exploit, and here also the Solari Priestess gets used. Yeah, she goes for the
The
I'm
Meteor
trying.
Shower.
Yeah, the meteor shower. I don't know why I blanked the name, but goes for the meteor shower. I thought she was going to go for the challenger card just to try and get much more
Mm-hmm.
defense going through. But interesting choice.
Yeah, the Meteor Shower versus the Challenger card, they're both five excuse me, five mana. One of them being a spell, one of them being a unit. I think either one would have been the correct choice. I don't think he should have gone for the Obliterate just because, since it's Ionia, it has the potential for a deny. And the same could be said for the Meteor Shower, but I think Meteor Shower, he's obviously trying to clear two cards at once. He wants to obviously get rid of the Zoe, or excuse me, the Zed and the Young Witch, and the Warrior can only go for one of those at a time. And the potential that it can only clear one at all is definitely there, since between Twin Disciples and Sharp Sight, there's enough to clear that that Warrior in return.
Okay, I guess overall that makes sense if you are able to utilize to clear the field. Although now Soy getting pulled, I think there should be a chance to protect it, but I think that it's going to get traded here. So probably the worst situation that the Soy gets cleared out right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that Winexploit can do to save it. He has only slow spells, and yeah, there's just nothing he can do. So unfortunately, he's going to lose this Zoe right now. But aside from that, Starset still setting himself up for another really good start. He still has the Young Witch. He still has Zed. Zed still has to reach that level up point. But between that, like the Young Witch, the Loren Protege, and now this other card, the Shadow Assassin. There's not a lot that Winexploit can really do to try and counter another big attack. He can just block damage, but he's still losing his board for nothing.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of the problems in the previous game was the board, the Starset's board just becoming stronger and stronger, and even when you cleared one of the important champions, at the end it didn't matter. Now with the thermo gem beam, I think it is thermo.
Thermogenic.
the thermogenic beam, yeah.
Yes.
Trying to clear out, but the that extra burst of health to try and protect the set, really like that. Make it just keeping the set safe and keeping your board strong. I think it's really ideal for a star set.
Hmm. Yeah, there's really no point to lose it because you still don't have Poppy, you still don't have one of those other cards that you need to potentially live through um or to potentially win the game with, which is something interesting that I was going to bring up earlier because you don't usually see like Ionia Demacia decks without Lulu. Usually Lulu is the card that you keep on and then you use like Poppy or Zed as that other win condition or use the elusives as the win condition. So it's very curious to see Poppy and Zed without the Lulu because both of those cards could potentially be the win condition. And then the Poppy obviously through buffing up the elusives, and then the Zed just through being Zed and attacking with two or one of his clones.
Just through being said, but yeah, I think that I think the set just can get value just by the fact of trying to destroy the or trying to attack the next as much as possible to get the value out of the card. But yeah, interesting to see the adaptations inside of the deck to get to utilize another win condition that it's not the common Jasulu.
Mm-hmm. And then yeah, now we're gonna see another open attack from Starset, which obviously I think is the correct move. I think it's curious though that he's not attacking with the Bright Seal Protector. At this point, you don't really gain anything from holding up like holding back right now. I think attacking with the Bright Seal Protector, forcing Winexploit to lose more of his board, is probably better off in the long run. But maybe Starset's waiting for something else, waiting for something to potentially buff up even more of his units. But right now he has almost a full board.
Is it maybe it may be fear out of just if you send a full blown attack, maybe something gets answered, and then if you lose a lot of your power in the board, then you don't have that protection in case for something later on. Which I would think for a starter that would be a an acceptable concern. But like you're saying, I think that just waiting on attacking most of the time it's not that important, especially if you have such a strong attack already in your board.
Mm-hmm. And I like this shadow or sharp sight answer from Starset. The Zed obviously has been silenced, but using this sharp sight to save it and then holding off, not using another one for to wait for an answer from exploit, I think was the smart play. But for win exploit, he's already used one card to try and clear this Zed. I think he should have just like went for broke. I mean, he already tried the silence and he saw the answer. He should have gone for something, whether it was the get excited or another hush, to try and clear this Zed. But instead, we're going to see another attack turn from exploit now.
In this one, I think that you don't take the falling comet. I think that you probably get much more value out of having much more strength in your board. But yeah, like I think getting that strength in your board can be much more ideal. And in the previous round, since he didn't just destroy the set, I think that now with that he can at least try and force out the set, right? Like try and force the kill on the set.
Yeah, I mean, right now, like at this point in the game, there's only 3 cards in Starset's hand. The odds that all of them can help keep this
Can
Zed alive
protect.
is very low. But with the Warrior, you're only going to be able to clear one of the cards
Yeah.
potentially. Like Starset, if he really wanted to, could make sure that whatever gets challenged kills this warrior. Unless it's the young witch. The young witch doesn't have enough health or power, unfortunately. But that still means you're not going to be able to clear the Zed next turn, which is another turn that he's kept on the board. And
Yeah, the fact that the
really like
set
about it.
is still alive, I think, is super crucial for Starset. With how much attention has been put from Win Exploit to try and delete him, I think that they're doing a great job to keep it up there. And the longer that this goes on, the longer that I think the set will just keep on getting the value that you want from that set.
So the one thing that I would have done if I was win exploit in that last invoke is take the traveler, the the celestial card that also invokes. Because right now I think the card that is going to help you turn this around is the not event horizon but cosmic rays. The card that obliterates all enemies with 3 or less health.
Yeah.
And I think that honestly like would have been the best card to pull from that original invoke. But if you didn't get that, you go for another invoke through that traveler that you could have pulled. But instead he goes for the warrior, which still has the potential, still has the way out of this position for Win Exploit.
I think that for Rain Exploit, at least having a much more bulky board to try and defend, to buy himself a little bit more time, it's going to be good enough, I think. Because if you end up just trying to survive an attack without enough cards on your side, it just feels so hard. And it kind of showed in the previous game where he tried to protect, blowing up as much resources as possible, and it didn't matter in the end. So I think that this time around, building
Mm-hmm.
your board a little bit more can be much more ideal.
Yeah, and he still has the Aurelian Soul card that heals your Nexus 5 and Invoke, so he still has that other opportunity to find one of these big game changing Celestial cards. But before that, he's going to try and go for a Get Excited onto Zed. Yet another chapter in the clear Zed off of the board this
In
game.
the kill him.
But instead, we're going to see the Nopify, which, Starset definitely running out of cards, definitely running out of resources here for this Zed to try and keep him alive. But before that, we're gonna see a pretty big attack actually from Starset with these elusive units, and he potentially has lethal here. The Hush coming out, I think, is the best way to survive through this, because if he didn't do anything, there very easily could have been a sharp sight onto one of these elusives, and that would have been lethal because there was already 8 damage without it.
Yeah, trying to clean up to clean up no, but to make it so that he cannot die in this attack. And betting on the correct idea. I think that, like you're saying, if the sharp side is there, you have to be ready to answer it back. And I think he does a nice job to stop it from coming through.
Yeah, a little preventative action there with the Hush. But instead, the sharp sight gets used on the fleet feather tracker to clear out the warrior, and now we're kind of back to zero here with exploit. He has one card on board, no way to clear the Zed, save for this sundial or sunburst. But he's going to go for the living legends, which is a pretty interesting move. I think obviously it's a really good card if you're playing Aesol, but when you only have 10 mana, it's not necessarily the best.
Yep, it's probably not the best, but one good thing that Win Exploit can try and play around with is the fact that there's not a lot of power in the hand from a star set. So if on this turn or on his next attack, star set doesn't get a lot of value or a lot of power to win the game, I think that he may begin to be in a pickle. I'm going to say because I cannot remember the other word that I was going to use.
Yeah, no, pickles a good description for where we're at, but using the Great Beyond, I think, is not the angle. I mean, obviously it's elusive. Obviously it can clear stuff off of this board or on defense, but I think the Scourge probably would have been the best move. Going for the the overwhelm plus 2/2 to all your units every time you attack is definitely a good thing to have, especially when you're already this far behind.
Yeah, it makes it so that you're threatened in case something goes wrong, right? I mean, from the enemy's point of view, if you put the scorch there, it makes it so that if you make a bad move, you're threatened to lose in the potential next turns. So I think that, like you're saying, it had a much bigger potential, but now with this attack, it's going to be. I think I don't want to call it do or die, but this is a really important attack for Starset because if he cannot get either really low health that then you maybe can win with this, it's going to be really bad for him. But I
Curious
think
why he
he
opted to go for the Young Witch onto the Zed and not the Young Witch onto another card, because now you've lost everything. You've lost the Zed no matter what, whether it had that Young Witch +1, and now you've lost all the other cards that you could have used the Young Witch on that would have been able to clear their blocker. And we see the shiny mode coming out. I think Starset's realized like he's run out of units, he's run out of cards, and there's this 17 power dragon on on Winexploit's board. Like we kind of flamed him not for taking the scourge, but at this point, like it
but
doesn't
now
really
it's
matter.
yeah now it actually shows its fangs because you can actually now be able to get the win with the dragon. Yeah, and that's it. There's no potential. There was no potential there to defend it. Star said, like you're saying, I think Star said the correct point, the correct idea, and the correct point to try and force with the set. That he utilized a lot of resources to protect. Remember that it was, I think, for 5 or 6 turns where he protected the set with as much as he can, committed resources, and the idea was so that you can get now the threaten the kill with that set. But at the end, just falling a little bit short with the potential from the set there, and it gets cleared. And there's where Win Exploit gets the value out of having that bulky board because he sacrificed a lot of the units, but it was all for that moment where he can finally pull out the card to be able to win the game. And I think that he did a really nice job understanding that win condition that in the first game maybe we didn't saw, or we didn't.
Yeah, I think Winexploit did a really good job at like denying the Zed level up. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously Starset was using so many resources to try and protect this Zed. It could have been inferred that like, oh, he only has a Zed in hand right now. There's nothing else that he has. He's trying to keep this alive, trying to get the level up, and he just used all of the units that he could pull to he could potentially pull to block the Zed, to block as much damage as possible every round to keep himself from dying and keep the Zed from leveling up until the point where he could use those invokes to get something like the Great Beyond, that 17 power dragon that he used to eventually win the
yeah.
game. But
Showcasing dragons are great. But now with that, Win Exploit gets the win, gets gets to equal the series, and now to the game 3, it's going to be Warlords from Win Exploit against Set once again Set Puppy from Starset. So maybe this time around with a much uh calm and slow deck, he can get the value there, right?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, both of these decks want to try and ramp up fast, and I was going to mention that not having Zed is definitely not the best place to be in if you're Starset, but he pulled it this round, so he's definitely not feeling too bad. The only issue I think now is that he has to watch out for some of these cards like the Merciless Hunter, the single combat, a lot that can potentially threaten both the Zed or the Poppy or the Young Witch. All of these cards that want to buff up each other and attack as much as possible. And if you're not able to get those attacks down, able to get those big like combos with like multiple units, and you're not really using the deck to its advantage if you're star set. Whereas Winexploit can sort of just do whatever. I mean, he has the action now. He has Radiant Guardian in hand. He can just sort of play it out and see what happens because, like we mentioned, the longer this game goes out, the worse it is for Starset.
Yeah, the warlords do ramp up really effectively the longer it goes, especially with all those extra stats that you do get with the saber and the like. So obviously, you do want to be able to play it that long. I think that Starset, like you're saying, he needs to play around the win condition that is set. Try and keep him as safe as possible. But I think that something that we didn't see last time that I think it's going to be coming crucial. It's obviously getting the puppy because I think that lack of the lack of the champion appearing, I think that it also affected Starset's plan. So it's going to be fundamental that we see it this time around.
Mm-hmm. And now we're going to see the attack come out from Starset. And I think Winexploit has only one option right here: the single combat. Yeah. So he played the Sandstone Charger so he could have an extra unit, and the only other thing he could do is use the single combat to save the action, which is I think the best move because, like we mentioned in that first game or the mirror matchup, this is a deck where it's very important to keep your champions alive.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I also think it was nice that obviously getting with the single combat also denying the second attack from the shadow, so not getting that extra value out of that, I think also really important right there. But like you're saying, keeping the action safe, and now with that Sivir pool, you Win Exploit doesn't need to go immediately for the Sivir, but already having the potential to just set up for the Sivir level up later on.
Yeah, it's the same move we saw Starset do in game one. Starset on the other side of this mirror matchup saved his Sivir, didn't drop it
Yeah.
immediately, and I think that's probably the best move to make if your Sivir's not like about to level up. Is just wait until it on drop is leveling up or on your attack turn drop is leveling up. Um, and now we're going to see Starset though use a rally, which
Oh, he goes for the Sivir here.
yeah, I mean it kind of makes sense because Starset's used all his mana. He has no way to realistically answer the Sivir to try and clear it this turn, but it's just interesting the angle that he's going for because he's going to let Starset attack here, which is not something you really want to do. But I'm just curious. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me why you would let him go for the attack here, but I guess if you want the Sivir out, you want the Sivir out.
Yeah, the thing is, anyway, the attack would have happened with or without the Sivir, right? So I think
Mm-hmm.
that just forcing a little bit too much, but with the Sivir now, you can maybe force the attack, and you do have the potential to protect. Yeah, so maybe it was mainly to try and get that cheap damage answer, much more so than just answering the potential attack from a star set.
Yeah, I mean that is still like very very risky, I think, but aside from that, still getting the damage off is important because once you get to the Sivir level up, you just need to give her overwhelm, and then you just basically just win the game just because every card has overwhelm now. But as we move forward, I think Starset is still in a very good spot with his board. His
Yeah.
hand is not looking too hot. He only has 2 cards left there, both units. He has no way to save this Zed or this Young Witch. He can only try and like bait Win Exploit into not using anything because of the potential that he has something to save the Zed.
Yeah, that was what I kind of was thinking about. If he much more so than just force the full on attack. If he tries to bait something out of Win
It
Exploit's
is lethal.
ban.
He has to block with everything.
Yeah, so forcing hero defense. Yeah. So at the end, it actually was a nice force attack, even though it's not like a clear cut win attack. It does clearing up the complete board from win exploit. So getting full, I think it's still getting full value. The hand, it's still a little bit of a problem because obviously he just has 2 units, so not that much protection for the set. But it's still such a good spot for Starset. Now with the next attack, he can threaten 100%.
Yeah, yeah, no. He already had the lethal threat and forced the full block. Next attack is potentially just an instant win for Starset right now. I mean, he's able to clear the board like you mentioned, and Win Exploit, while he has units in hand, they're both pretty expensive. There's no way he can play both of them next turn. He can play still just 1 unit
You
next
can
turn
just
unless
play
he
one,
pulls
yeah.
another card. Yeah, he can't even play the Merciless Hunter and something else. He can only play one of these cards. So he has to try and do something sneaky, I think, with the action, whether it's just going for an attack or going for with drop of the Vicarin. I don't know. So the fleet for the pull is actually very good. So now he can play
Yeah.
2 units and have Challenger on 2 units potentially with the Merciless Hunter.
Yeah, so that will actually really important, making at least chunkier the board. But I was thinking maybe you force an attack. Yeah, force an attack, try and clean some of these units, and then in the next turn use a much bigger unit to try and defend.
So right now he used the vulnerable onto the Zed, which I think is the right move for clearing the Zed.
Yeah.
I think he needs to be attacked by the this. Yeah, I think he needs to be challenged by the Action, just so that the Action can clear Zed and live, and then both the Fleet Feather Tracker needs to pull an elusive card. Um, but the only issue is that there's still the lethal threat
Yeah.
on this deck, like on the board. I think pulling the Young Witch was probably not as good of an idea as pulling the Shadow Assassin, but at this point, now that we see the cards come out of Starset's hand onto the board, it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter.
It was it was a nice pull and I think a nice attempt, but it just I there's no chance anymore. Yeah, there's sadly no chance anymore with the so many elusive cards and the way that it starts to just destroy the board previously from Win Exploit. It just made it harder to pull off. So even though I like the maneuver that a Win Exploit pull off, kind of similar to what we saw in the first game actually with the same deck, he did a nice job trying to make it so that he can pull off at the end, but the difference in power in the board at that point was just so much, and then with the extra units that he had in hand, it was just a much easier pull to force the threat and be able to win the game.
Yeah, very very true. I mean, like you mentioned, like I think that that when Exploit tried his best, he played those cards very very
Yeah.
well. It's just unfortunate that Starset had the better hand and played not played better, but like had better hands and had a better board for the turns that he had the attack token. He like that one or that the one attack where he forced a full block from Win Exploit when he had like the 3 elusive cards and perfect lethal on
Yeah.
that. Like that was probably what sealed the deal for Starset to win the game, which obviously he played really well, and I think he deserves the win. But still a very very well played series from Win Exploit overall.
Yep, 100%. I think for from both they pull off really well. I gotta give credit to Starcy because at that last game with the pool that he with the full on attack that he went, a lot of those times it was without the resources to be able to save the set or a couple of those other cards. So still utilizing, I think, baiting correctly some of those times and make it so that Win Exploit had to go for some of those blocks. And when the lethal was procced, or well, the lethal was threatened with a full block, I think, like you're saying, it starts at just making it so that the Win Exploit had to go for the full defense. And at that point, it was close to game over. It was really, really bad at that point because everything was blown up to protect the Nexus, and it just sadly after that point, it was easier for Starset to set up for his attack. But overall, I think great play from both players overall. Really nice decks. I really like the soy puppy that actually the soy bite that actually delivered at the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's all I can really say. I mean you touched on all of it. I mean
Yeah, I think then with that we're going to a quick break before the next match. But next match should be just as exciting as this one, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back really soon. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second stream match of the night. It's going to be an exciting series between Falls and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's Falls and Fanzora. So if I mispronounce it, I'm sorry. I'm Latin American. You can blame it on that if you want. But it should be a really exciting match.
Blame them for
Interesting
having
decks.
difficult names.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's how I'm going to blame it at the end. But yeah, so an interesting match with interesting decks. A couple of decks that I haven't had the opportunity to watch a lot. Poppy Looks, particularly one, and then that Team Versus 20 that I think you had a couple of thoughts on that particular deck.
Yeah, I mean that deck I don't think is going to be played. I think just between like the interactions of Teemo Shrooms and Sejuani is not going to be enjoyable, and I think just from a player mental standpoint, Falls is probably going to ban that deck away.
I can see that.
My experiences with Teemo recently aside, but aside from that, you mentioned the Poppy Lux deck, and obviously Hirsch, the Lord or Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah,
LOR, Legends of
our
Runeterra.
master for now.
Yeah, our overlord has been talking about Poppy Lux a lot, about how Lux is coming back into this scene, how strong she potentially is, and I'm excited to see how it is because I'm not a believer.
Yeah, I usually don't believe a lot of things that Hirsch tells us, so it may work, it may not. I'm interested to see what happens, but I think that if one of the cards can pull off with the looks, it's probably the Poppy. Poppy kind of finds herself in a lot of decks just by how valuable of a card she may end up being. So I think that with the Poppy, the looks may end up shining a lot more as well.
Yeah, and with the Lux change, I think that was brought up as the biggest aspect of it is that originally you had to play a 6 mana card, but now you only have to play 6 mana worth of cards or spell cards, excuse me. And that's I think honestly the healthiest change. It actually brings down her level up mechanic a lot.
Yeah,
But aside from that, it's full of really cheap Bandlewood and Demacia cards, which is I believe Poppy's job to buff up eventually to win. And then enough with Fansura. Falls is bringing in some interesting decks. You know the pirate frostbite deck doing play
yeah.
Sejuani, as well as bringing back lurkers. But aside from that, he's also bringing an interesting deck. He's bringing Fizz Lee Sin, which I haven't really seen a lot of, and I'm curious to know how it would work.
Yeah, I was trying to think if it's kind of the same to how you would play with a Zoe Lee Sin. Obviously, not overly stacking the Lee Sin, but obviously depending on the Lee Sin to be kind of your main carry, right? But it may also fall into a different direction from what I've seen with the rest of the cards. So it's going to be interesting to see how it ends up developing. I don't know why, but I think that may be the deck that ends up banned. But Lurker is another. It's another kind of interesting deck that we may end up seeing. I for one thought that the deck was completely dead, but it turns out that some other people actually play it. So I'm interested to see how does the deck develops in this series and how does it work out overall.
It'll be an interesting thing to see. I mean, I think honestly, like the Zoe Lee Sin deck can potentially answer the Lurker deck really well if you're able to set up well enough with the Zoe Lee Sin deck. Between the Eye of the Dragon summoning the ephemeral units every round, that could be a potential way to stop a lot of the aggression from this Lurker deck. Because while they have a lot of
Yeah.
power, they're not typically overwhelm cards, and they're not typically challenger cards, so they can only really just attack with high power and hope that there's nothing to block them. Which, if you're summoning a Dragonling or two every round, then that's just free cards to block with.
Yeah, I think that it's and I don't want it to sound kind of bad, but the Lurker decks, it's kind of a dragon, but a little bit less than that. It's dragons, but lesser than that. Just because you don't get those extra powerful cards that give you the overwhelms, that give you the overall power ups that some other cards give you in the dragons deck that we have seen recently. So I think lurkers does find value with being able to just out muscle you in the long run, just like dragons do. But like you're saying, without those extra cards to make it so that it's hard to defend against the lurkers, then there may be avenues for the Lee Sin Zoe to be able to counter it and find a way to win the match overall. So I think that that may be a nice answer. I think that, like you're saying with the Zoe Lee Sin, if you have the correct setup for it, more than likely it usually falls into the category where if you get the correct setup, more than likely you end up winning with that deck.
Mhm.
It's just how long does it take, and how much do you take to find the correct pieces to build up for your strategy to work. From what I've heard, we're going to go into game really soon, so just bear with our beautiful faces for a little bit longer here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just gonna be coming down to like what each player decides to ban. Like, I think the lurker might get get thrown out just because of how much Lurker was a menace, back in Rise of the Underworlds. Maybe Fansor is not worried about it. Maybe he's just like, oh yeah, Lurker, it should be easy enough to play against. But the Teemo deck, I think, I mean, my experience aside, I think that deck is probably going to be banned just because of the player mentality aspect. Like losing to a Shroom can really tilt you for the
Yeah.
rest of the series and potentially the rest of the tournament if you're able to turn it around after that. But I'm just curious what's gonna happen because I mean both of the players are running well, Fansora is running some very interesting decks, and then Fails is running some decks that no one would really want to play against because just how strong they potentially could be.
Yep, I think that that can play a lot into the mind games, not only in what you would end up banning, but also in what you end up picking, going to try and counter each of the decks, right? Because there's a couple of things that kind of throw curveballs from each of the sides. Obviously, one has a much more or a couple of decks that seem much more standard than what the other person does take into the play. But each of those has those kind of small curveballs that if you're not really prepared for that, it doesn't matter what answer you may end up having. It may not end up working overall. So it's going to be interesting. What does each of the player want to do with this series? I think, like you're saying, probably trying to keep the mental up. You're banning away those decks that just kind of eat away at you, like the Teemo. I think the Sejuani GP as well. It's a deck that can be problematic. I think that the Lurker deck, it's probably one that I think it's not going to get banned, just because I think that you may want to test the waters much more against that than against the other decks.
And that's obviously like an angle that players can take into a game or a tournament like this where it's a best of three. You can kind of be like, what deck do I not want to play against at all? Like, what deck do I don't think I can beat, like, with either of my decks? And I take that away, and then look at the other two and be like, all right, well, like, obviously, for example, like, let's just say Lurker is just an L. Like, Lurker I'm gonna lose
Yeah.
anyways, but the other two decks, one of them I'm not too sure about, and then the third deck I can beat with both of my decks that I'm assuming will make it out, and that's just kind of like the macro like series length play that you're going for.
Yeah, so okay. So we have received notice. Quickly, we're going to throw to a quick break before going to the game. Some technical difficulties. Hopefully nothing serious, but we'll be back really, really soon. So don't go anywhere. And we are back almost at the end of game one, so don't be surprised about everything that has been transpiring. We are just entering just like you guys, so we will try and quickly see what has happened. It is Lurkers against, I think it is Sejuani GP, right?
Yeah,
No,
Lurkers
it
versus
is Sejuani
the
Timo.
the, the Sejuani Teemo, yeah.
Yeah,
And very, very interesting here, actually. Fails has 6 health, but he has actually a very, very good hand now. Between the call to pack onto the Rek'Sai and now having another Rek'Sai in hand, this is going to be a very, very big attack coming out. He has the potential to just get lethal, I think. He's going to get. Oh, but
oh,
nope,
the
the
Entomb.
Entomb actually, he's going to come out and interrupt that real quick.
Yeah, there was the potential, and there was also the weekend on a couple of these champions. So it could have been a really nice attempt at running lethal. But I think yeah, I think the faces show already. I think that it's not going to work. That Entomb coming in massive there.
Yeah, and Fansora, the best part, still has another. Oh wait, no, excuse me. That the hand is very delayed. I was gonna say he still has
Yeah,
another three sisters, so he could potentially just go for another Entomb, but no, he's actually gonna go for the Fury of the North and get the actual lethal this
yeah,
turn. So very, very good actually. Very, very smooth play there.
yeah. From what we see, it was from what we saw, it was quick. Not quick, but it was nicely done by Fansora.
Mhm.
First of all, apologies for what happened. Technical difficulties. Riot is to blame. So these kind of things happen, but
Curse
at least
you,
we were able to watch a
Rio.
little bit.
But yeah, I mean the deck that I actually wanted to see the most, just because of how intriguing it is to be like, oh, how many shrooms is he gonna pull now? We unfortunately will not be able to see. And then lurkers, I mean, it's lurkers. We know what
Yeah,
happens there, but we still have the possibility to see it again. I mean, lurkers didn't win, so we could see it this game as well. And yeah, it's actually going to be Lurkers into Zoe Lee Sin. So this is the matchup that we talked about before we cut to our technical intermission about how if the Eye of the Dragon is able to set up, it could be very, very useful at interrupting these attacks from the lurkers, being able to stop a lot of the aggression, trading out for some of those like 2 or 3 health attackers that Fails is going to
yeah,
try and go for.
yeah. And I think that after what we saw, obviously you need those kind of nice setups to be able to deny the potential attack because you really are banking on not getting just immediately destroyed by the amount of cards that will end up coming through from the Lurkers deck.
And aside from being able to look at the deck lists before you get into the match, lurker decks, they're 90% units. There's maybe 6 7 spells total, and those spells are creating more lurkers in the deck. So you know what's coming. You know the
Yeah,
odds that his cards in hand are units that he can use to attack you are pretty high. And the upside to that is the Zoe Lee Sin deck is a very defensive, very reactive type of deck, but there's only so far you can go with 5 mana worth of, or with 5 mana. So
yeah. When I think about it, I kind of put it in reference to it's a metal sword against a, I don't want to say wooden shield, but something a little bit more durable. That if you survive long enough, you get to now just kick him out of place. So that's kind of how I feel like these two decks battling it's like. And if Ansora is able to survive long enough, utilize the defensiveness from the deck, get the Zoe, get the leasing, get the setup correctly, he's going to be able to shine. But right now, even though he has the Twin Dragons, not getting the Zoe or yeah, ideally the Zoe early on to try and get the stacking from the Zoe out, it's kind of can be kind of hard, especially with so many cards that are already coming through from the Lurker's deck.
mm-hmm. And we're gonna see the challenge onto this or excuse me, Palcat. The the Eye of the Dragon, which will be saved by the Pal Cascade, which I think is a really good play from Fansora. He knows what he needs to do to try and survive this game, and it's use these use these Eyes of the Dragons to create Dragonlings to stall out this attack and clear out Fels' board before he can get, six units or 6 units on the board that each have like 8 attack each, and they were all 2 mana. And
Yeah,
it actually
realistically, oh, sorry.
no, go.
I was going to say realistically, as long as he doesn't, as he has one health, he can pull off this victory really, really effectively. Especially with this deck that is really a one. a one hit type of destruction with the Lee Sin. As long as he is able to survive, he's doing a great job.
Hmm. Now, curious that he didn't attack with both dragonlings there.
Maybe not wanting to, but yeah, it
I
is kind of
mean, yeah.
interesting not wanting to get just the extra health. Maybe he was thinking that it was going to get destroyed or something else, but I think that it was worth at least trying to get the health back. And
Hmm.
now once again the attack this time around.
Yeah, the attacks coming out and using just the fearsomes, the Xerxai hatchlings is actually very very smart. I mean, it denies the block from the dragonlings at all, but you can still go for the hammerhead. I think the hammerling to get just like another attack off to get another threat. And I mean, it gives them a little bit of health back if it gets blocked, but at this rate, it doesn't really matter. You're just trying to clear things off the board.
Yeah, you do want to go with a barrage of attacks. Like try and force as much as possible because even if they get denied, I think that it's also still a valuable idea. Just try and force out cards in the hand. Try and force out something out because that card may just may make it so that later on when you want to force an even bigger attack, they don't have that extra defense, right?
Yeah, and curious that Fansora decided to pass and not get the level or not the level up, excuse me, the passive off for the Eyes of the Dragons to summon more dragonlings last turn. So now he's going to be able to now he's on the back foot even more so because he's losing this attack token, he's losing this opportunity to heal back up with those dragonlings.
Especially with how with not that much of a risk just throwing the dragon links out, right? Like it's not like you're going to get immediately punished. I think by the lurkers there's not much chance. So I think that just getting the value out of that may be better. But Lizzie gets pulls out, but not Zoe.
Oh yeah. So that's I think that's why he was saving one of those dragonlings last turn. Is he was waiting for a Snapjaw Sword to come out, and he wanted to be able to block it with a dragonling,
Okay.
which we just saw or would have saw last turn had we had he been able to summon the dragonlings during his attack. But now we are basically seeing the beginning of the end. There's only 4 units on Fansora's board. There's let's see 10 18 damage on Fal's side, and there's an overwhelm as one of those, so there's really no way to come back from this one because there's no way to block one of these Xerxai hatchlings unless you can pull a Twin Disciples, which he does. He actually pulls the Twin Disciples,
Does get it.
but it doesn't mean anything because the damage from the the Dune Runner is too much to survive.
Yeah, I think that the pool that they yet survive. I think long enough would have been good enough, but this is the thing with the lurkers is the constant barrage of attacks that you do get and the constant just consistent damage that goes through. There may be a chance, I think, maybe to defend this, but
Oh, 1 health.
oof,
1 health. If there was a Rek'Sai in that top deck, then that would have been just a
bye
game
bye.
over. There wasn't enough cards in Fansora's hand to survive that.
And that now means Lee Sin can get pulled out, like put down, and also gets the level up. So that's the thing. If you survive with one health, it can make a huge difference with this deck with the Soul Lee Sin.
Yeah, but
Ooh.
it's
Yeah.
too little, too late. The Jawfish coming out, and the last thing you want to see with the Jawfish is all of your units attacking one unit. But he gets both of the cards that he needs to clear down with that play. He gets the attack onto the Lee Sin and 2 attacks onto the Eye of the Dragon. Now, the only upside here from this is that there was enough mana left over in Fansora's deck to give the Lee Sin a barrier. So, had this other Jawfish attack gone off onto the Lee Sin, that would have just basically been the game.
it is still going to be forcing. So okay, no, surviving the other attack, even though it was forced to almost kill the Lee Sin. Lee Sin is still alive. So Fensora doing a really nice job keeping the card there, just in case with all the force that falls. I think it's false. Yeah, false has been trying to force out with the lurker. So doing a really nice job to stay alive.
Yeah, and now we see Fowls using the the Xerxai collar to put a Lee Sin, excuse me, the Pike on top of the deck, and we're going to see the tech come out and turn that into a spell. So Fansor has to be very careful. Obviously, he's going to see the Pike get turned into a spell with the lurk. He's going to know that it's in hand. He's going to need to be very careful about how he uses the barrier on Lee Sin. Because if the Pike comes out and is used to clear the Lee Sin, it's going to be a very, very bad spot.
I think at that point, if the Lee Sin gets clear with a pipe, I think it's pretty much game over, right? At that point, unless
Yeah.
there's another Lee Sin pulled out immediately, I think that it would be just that.
So this is curious. So he has there before he had the scattered pot out, there was 12 damage on the board, or 11 damage on the board, perfectly that could not be blocked. He had enough mana for the recall. He goes for the scattered pod, which attunes and gives him more enough mana for the recall still, but he's going to be spending a lot of mana to survive this round and still losing the scattered pod.
I think it may have to be just to make the field be a little bit stronger, like having that extra card to defend just in case. Like you're saying, expending the mana just to get that extra mana for the recall, but I
Like
think there's a good chance it works. Although
so
there's still 100% here.
yeah, he has to use the recall, but he has to use it onto not the jawfish. He can't let the jawfish go off again. So he needs to leave the jawfish on the board. I think he has to use it on the. No, you have to. So next
Oh
turn he has to lead with an open attack, and he has to use like either the guiding touch or something. The you have nothing. You have to lose Lee Sin. That's so
yeah, he's
unfortunate.
risking Lee Sin there, kind of strange. Like you could have taken any other card, right? Like there was no risk of taking the other ones in case.
Yeah, and that's not a Lee Sin, so I don't think there's really a way for him to come out from this one. I mean, he has the twin disciples in hand. He can get 8 damage off, but the jawfish is there. The jawfish can just be
Yeah,
dropped, and that's gonna be it. Like this is gonna be a game. I think there's really no way to come back from this. Fencer has no units. There's 2 units on on Fail's side, and there's way
yeah.
more
I
than
think that's
enough
it.
damage to kill.
Like and once again, unless there's a Lee Sin pulled here, I just think there's no. Yeah,
I mean,
I think that's
even if there was the Lee Sin pull there, I don't think there's any way out of it. Like there's nothing you can do.
yeah. I think that it was such a leaf and die situation, but by whatever you can pull out that is strong enough to survive. But like it just worked out so well with the constant attacks from the side of false. It's still alive, but even with the board as it is right now, okay, maybe with
There's
this pull.
no there.
No,
He needed to pull another stun at least
yeah,
to try and survive this one. But yeah, no, that's gonna be the game two for Fail. So turning it around with the lurk deck, getting the win that he almost had in game one. But definitely not the cleanest. I think there was definitely a lot of
yeah,
back and forth. Definitely a lot of potential from both sides to take this game home. But Fail's able to play it out correctly, play it out well. Pull the cards that he needed. The jawfish, I think, probably the most important there, forcing a lot of resources to try and save Lee Sin and eventually close that one out.
yeah. I think that moment where the listen was kind of forced into a situation where you pull out the jellyfish out to, or yeah, I think it was the jellyfish out to try and survive, but then you once again get forced into a second attack which ends up just destroying you. I think made the game so much more harder for Fansora, and I think that the fact that the Zoe was never pulled out really really affected the outcome a lot. So even though I think Fansora did a really nice job without the Zoe, now he is actually able to pull it out in this game at the start. It was just sadly not enough, and this time around it's going to be the Zoe against the
The
that
Fizz Lee Sin.
it is Fizz Lee Sin. Okay, so Zoe Lee Sin against Fizz Lee Sin. It's going to be interesting.
Now the question is, does Fansora use the twin disciplines to save the Zoe here? And yeah, it looks
Yeah,
like
he
he's going to
does.
opt for it. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, keep the Zoe out. Oh, but then another pokey stick. It's super unfortunate. This.
It is
Wow.
it is kind of so. Hey, at least he pulls. At least you do get damage onto the soil, right? So even though it's not the kill,
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not the kill, but Zoe goes back to 1 health, so now you
yeah,
still have another pokey stick.
it's back to square one. To square one, pretty
Oh,
much.
so we're not going for the pokey stick. We're just gonna go for the attack with the shell folk and the the squire. But Fansor's gonna block with the Zoe, which is very interesting.
Yeah, Gable with the soy. I can see. I kind of see why to just not take the extra damage, and as long as you keep just summoning, it's not going to be the worst of situations. But I think that you usually want to keep that Zoe up as long as possible. Like that cheap damage is not going to be that bad in the long run with this kind of decks,
Mm-hmm.
right?
No, like there's so many ways with this deck to get that health back. Like especially now that it's not the lurk deck, there's not these big hitters. You can just sort of get chipped down and then use the dragon links to go back up. And especially when you already have the Zoe out, like attacking at that point is not really necessary. You can just sort of keep her on the back of the board and just go for that level up. Go towards the point where every time you summon a dragon link, all your cards are now getting life steal, and then use that to buff up your Lee Sin even more. Like every time he's attacking, he's healing your Nexus potentially the whole amount. Like back from, even if you're at 1, you can heal it back up to 20. But he decides to go for the block, which I think is just not the best move.
Yeah, it is surprising. Like a lot of the I don't want to say it's completely dependent on the soy because a lot of the battery is getting the leasing as well. But soy is it's one of your most important cards, and you do
Mm-hmm.
want to get her stacked as long as possible, or get her stacked, and then you can really decide to throw it away or not. That it's after you actually get the value from the soy that you can throw her away. But it's already on that
Mm-hmm.
you didn't get that out.
Yeah, the name of the game for the Zoe Lee Sin deck is stall. Stall until you get Lee Sin. Stall until Zoe levels up and you're now elusive and lifesteal every round. Like that's how you win the game with either of those champions. Obviously, the Lee Sins is much more straightforward. That's
Yeah.
what all your deck is built for. But you can still have the Zoe be part of that win condition too. If you can get to that point where you level her up, get to the point where all your elusives or all your units are now elusive, but that involves saving her, I think, which is
It
obviously
involves
not what
her being there.
it involves her being alive for you to play cards. But obviously that wasn't the route that we're going down with Fansor. He's going all eggs into the Lee Sin basket. The only issue is that the Lee Sin basket
That
has been
there's no
misplaced.
yeah, there's no basket yet. It's just the eggs lying there, waiting to be
Waiting to be
picked
picked.
up in the basket. On the other side, the basket is already down. The
Yeah.
Lee is already put down by falls, getting the stack down. It's just level one Lee, so it's not the worst situations, obviously. But already having the champion out to begin the stacking, it's important. And the Fizz is also getting the stacking. So when those two come out into the field, it may begin to be chaos for Fensora.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting angle here for Fansora, and with the guiding touch, he's going to be able to pull this moon or gifts from beyond, which is going to more than likely be used to create another dragon, Eye of the Dragon or on board, excuse me. But it still isn't going to do anything about the amount of units that are on the board for falls.
Yeah, and
He
this
has,
attack may clear some.
yeah, this attack will undoubtedly clear some, but I mean, falls is going to get rid of the Eye of the Dragon. He's going to have forced a block out of some other units to avoid this damage, but there's not a lot that can really be done. I mean, the Pal Cascade comes out, but that's not going to save anything. There's going to be a Pokey Stick. Oh, but the Pokey
Ooh.
Stick comes out onto the Dragon Link
The,
instead.
it was saved for this moment. This is the moment that the Poké Stick was going to be used. Well, Fansora did just throw away the Soy previously, so the Poké Stick didn't actually get any value, right? So right now, at
Mm-hmm.
least being used. It's a pretty,
It's a big deny.
yeah.
It's a, I mean, is that 2 health that you're getting back, and the clear of that unit really worth 4 mana? Is that is that what we're going for? I mean, because now you don't get to have that second dragon or Eye of the Dragon on the board.
Yeah, I would have thought you would want to conserve the knife for something much more valuable, especially with like you're saying a four cost this early on can be kind of important to keep, but it does go through it. They still keep the health up, so not losing that much health anyway. And looking at the age of the hands, even though there was a couple of champions throw out and cards utilized, there's a really huge difference in terms of the hands from both players.
I mean, obviously Fel only has one card, but
Yeah,
I mean, Fensora is making an interesting play in that like he didn't use the gifts from beyond, which I think is probably what I would have done in that position, but he's now has another one as well. But he has the Lee Sin though, so the Lee Sin is coming out and it's leveled up.
yeah, thanks to although all those previously used cards. So maybe actually keeping safe or throwing away the soy previously to try and get as much cards down was actually useful. I think that you probably can get that anyway with the listen, so it doesn't change that much. But it's going to be both listens level up for both players.
Yeah, so this is kind of where we get to um a bad place to be if you're either of these players. Is whoever has the attack token, whoever can clear the other person's Lee Sin should be
Favor.
the favor. And we have the deny coming out, and it's basically just going to make it mean it so that the Lee Sins strike each other. Except Fansora's now has the barrier. Oh no, I thought he had
No,
already cast
I
his spell.
think that
No, it just escaped
yeah, no, it
challenger.
wasn't. I think it was the no, actually no, they didn't have the barrier, so it was
Yeah,
just
no,
denying the potential health lead. Now it has the barrier.
that was my mistake. I thought he had already cast a spell, but no, it's just going to be trading the Lee Sins. I mean, that deny is very, very useful there. I think that was probably the best play he could have made. And now he has the Lee Sin and fails does not. So now the tempo is all in Fansora's side. I mean, there's nothing that can really happen for for Fansora to really fall behind unless one of these attacks doesn't go through. Unless he can, Faust can find that Lee Sin, get it on the board, and make it so that it doesn't get immediately cleared out by the other Lee Sin.
Yeah, it would have to be that you can clear the enemy's Lee Sin and get yours back, right? So getting back
Mm-hmm.
the Lee Sin advantage at this point.
No, very very true there, and curious that that he's gone for the Calibrum, or no, excuse me, not the Calibrum, the Infernum
Infernum?
onto
Yep.
Lee Sin, because he's only going to get 12 damage off this round. I feel like you should use the twin disciplines as well, so you can get even more off. But
Can
obviously,
you
that's not
threaten
the
lethal
angle.
with that in this
He
particular turn, or would have been?
Fowls would have had one health,
Oh,
which
okay.
not the best place to be in, but it would not have been lethal. So maybe he's just waiting for a turn that he would have guaranteed lethal, which will without a doubt be the next turn.
Yeah, I think that with the amount of hands that he has already been able to crew, it's probably going to come the next turn that he attacks, which is next one.
Yeah, and Fansora is in the position now where he could even just eat this and not even do anything and just attack next turn.
Yeah, realistically, he's not threatened and lethal. There's not that much chance that he dies here. So I like the attempt to at least defend it, but it's so unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense to just sort of go for that, but like we mentioned, there's only one card in Fall's hand, and it was another fizz spell. So we do see the Shen bows coming out. So I think this is just going to be the game. There's nothing that can really be done for Fowls. He's out of cards, unfortunately, and Fansora was able to find the Lee Sin, keep it on the board, and now he's going to be able to go for the win. Or
Yeah, and I think that difference right there really important. Utilization of economy from each of the players' hands, getting much more value out of the cards that you were giving from the side of Ensora. I think that utilizing the economy really well, because even though I think we can both agree that the Soy was kind of not necessary to throw out so early on. He still got so many valuable resources to try and protect some of the cards. Then when he got the leasing, he had the upper hand in the leasing fight, and when he won that leasing fight, he pretty much had the control over the outcome of the game, because we talked about this. Wall's hand was really weak in comparison to Fansora's hand. So
Hmm.
when the hand difference began showing, it just made it much more clear that Fansora wasn't a clear advantage. He took full advantage out of that.
Yeah, I think it all came down to sort of Fansora like really just calling out fouls, being like, "Oh yeah, like I know it's your attack token. I'm gonna drop this Lee Sin, and we're gonna see who's gonna win the game right now. And if you don't have a means to make sure that my Lee Sin goes away, like not just back to my hand, but like you kill my Lee Sin, then I'm just going to win the game, and
Yeah,
I will know that you don't have anything to turn this around."
yeah, it was a I don't want to say a risk reward situation, but it was a nice attempt to kind of evaluate, or yeah, to value what was on the enemy's hand, to see
Hmm.
what the potential was there to be threatened with. And then when he realized that there wasn't that much, he just went full power in, utilizing the cards effectively. Obviously, not throwing cards away, but making sure that he used the right amount of cards to get enough power to be able to win the game. And at the end, with the difference, we saw how well Fansora played with that. Even though I do think it was contested. I think that the Lurkers, if the Lurkers gets that first win, we may have seen a little bit of a different series overall. But it was really well played over the course of the series by Fansora, even in the game that he lost.
I mean, it was definitely a very well played game from both of them. I mean, the Lurkers deck obviously had some trouble against the Timo Sejuani, but it came back
Yeah.
in game two, and then game three honestly still could have been either way. It just came down to the Lee Sin duel, and that's how Lee Sin works out at that point in the game. Like whoever gets to keep theirs on the board is more than likely who's going to win.
Yep, and I think we saw that perfectly. So going forward, it's going to be interesting if we get what more not mirror deck matchups, but Lee Sin mirror matchups where you
Mhm.
do value the Lee Sin as one of your central pieces. It's going to be interesting to see who can win that duel, and if winning that duel does really define the victory, right? Because there may be instances where the player can just circumvent around that the fact that the Lee Sin is lost, and then try and win around that. So it's going to be fun going forward. But with that, we're going to go to a quick break before our next match. I think it's going to be quarterfinals or semifinals. Yeah, I think it's quarterfinals next. So don't go anywhere. We will be back really soon. It's still exciting seeing these matches. Welcome back. I don't know what's happening there, but it'll get it fixed soon, so it's okay. But welcome back to now the quarterfinals match. We have Grandpa Roji against someone that a lot of people may have seen already. He's I want to say a typical customer here in the Runeterra Academy LoR tournament. He is Wolf Horu, previous tournament winner, looking to defend his crown, and it's going to be a really interesting match. I know a couple of decks that Wolf Horu already runs. Running my favorite deck, the Shivana Radiant Soul Dragons Destroyer deck. I will call it that because it sounds fun, and and I'm really excited to see it, to see if it gets big. Honestly, I really want to look forward to seeing some dragons today.
Yeah, the dragon deck was what he mentioned last week after he won, was one of his like most comfortable decks, what he felt like was a really successful archetype into what other people were running in that tournament. But he still has quite the other decks to go up against. I mean, he's got to deal with or excuse me, no, Wolf is not running the dragons this week. It's sorry, Grandpa Roji that's running the
Yeah,
dragons.
sorry for that. It was
No, you're
actually my mistake.
no, you're good. You're good. You're good. I was gonna be like, well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, he said last week he liked running it, but oh yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you that Dragons is super strong. I think it's one of the best decks right now, just because of how valuable the cards are. Like Dragons already are expensive cards, but
Yeah.
they give you a lot of stats when they're on the board.
Yeah, it's the type of deck that when you are able to run it long enough, you can get that really strong hit that just destroys you. So it's a really fun deck
Mhm.
in my opinion. I really love dragons overall, so it just makes sense. But looking now actually to what Wolf Horror will be running, it's going to be the a variation to what I think we already saw today in the by Poppy. This time is by Ezreal, so it should be interesting to see. It's going to be six poppies, so a Bundle City deck, and also the GP Sejuani from Wolf Forest. So a couple of interesting decks. I think by the Sejuani GP, it's probably not going to get much play. I don't think, especially for World Foru. And if it's against dragons, particularly, I think that there's not going to be much play because I think that deck works so well to deny the potential from the dragon decks.
Yeah, very very true there. I mean, as strong as dragons are, the Bandle burn deck really hurts. The Bandle tree, I mean, just not an exciting mechanic to play against. Aside from that, like I'm eager to get into the game. I think we should be able to get in there soon. I'm curious how the
Yeah.
Ezreal Vi works because we did see that last week and it kind of popped off. I mean, Ezreal's pretty strong in the first place, but Vi just being able to do 5 damage to the Nexus, able to get them into that chip range from or Ezreal, where he can just sort of deal 6 damage to the Nexus in one turn and win the game with really no answer, is so good.
Yeah, I think that it seems to be like the kind of a deck that if you left and touch really early on, it's going to cause so much troubles the longer that it goes. And the
Mhm.
setup for it's not really dependent on a lot of heavy cost cards. So it's not like you need to spend a lot to be able to get to a strong point with the buy or the as well. So it's a deck that, like you're saying, if they get it to a nice spot, it's more than likely then you probably can win the game through that already. So it's going to be fun to see. I'm not sure. Like if it's a strong deck that we have already seen, it probably gets spanned away. But I would like to see a little bit of what Ezreal Bike can showcase us.
It's also, like, just to add on to that, has the Curious Shellfolk, which is a really good card at generating more value because between the pranks and the other exciting stuff, you can really create a lot more cards in your hands than you otherwise would have, and cards that you wouldn't have in your deck at all to begin with your when you're taking them from the other players. So very high potential in that deck at least. But I think we're about to get in. Hopefully, what
It
deck do you think is gonna not make
should
it
be
through
really
a
soon.
TDS?
On the first one, uh we saw that there's warlords. I think that may be something that we don't see. I think that players have been much more willing to play against warlords at the start, at least at the start of the games. It seems that they're willing to let it through, see how they can face against that, and if they think it works, they don't touch it. But
Mhm.
I think that warlords is one of those that, even though you know you can play against it, like its strengths are so clear even counter it sometimes can be hard. So I think it may be that I'm expecting at least to not see GP Sejuani. I think that poses so much of a threat to some of the decks that Grandpa Roji is running. So I think that may be the main ban that I'll be focused on, and I want to see dragons play. I just want to see dragons. That's my favorite here.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see some dragons too, but it's gonna come down to what's banned. I think you mentioned the game mechanics were wrong. I think that's probably what's going to be banned. It's just too good into the decks that Grandpa Roji is running. The dragons could take too long. The Zed Poppy is too weak to handle the spells and the just raw damage that comes out from that deck. And then the Warlords is just too much of a coin flip. I mean, there's
Yep.
potential for it to go in the Warlord's favor, but it's not as much of a guarantee as some of the other decks that Warlords can play into.
Okay. So we'll be just got notice. We'll be really short into the game. We're still in bad phase, so we can still theorize what we're going to see. Like you're saying, both the I think that Wolf 4 with his decks having much more of an edge in terms of what he can counter, because some of these decks work so well against what Grandpa Roji has. Particularly, obviously, we have spoken about the Sejuani GP potential. I think that six Poppy as well as Ezreal Bai can have avenues, and you really don't want to play decks that kind of are dependent on a coin flip, right? You do want to get as much input from yourself into the win conditions as possible. So I think that just taking away those the particular taking away from World 4, just the GP's running should be taken out, and I think there's going to be a much more big focus onto Warlords. I think that if you take that deck, the GP Sejuani out, the Warlords becomes much more powerful. But it seems that it's going to be GP Sejuani for World 4 in the first one, and it's Warlords for Grandpa Roji. So it's
Dragons,
going to be
dragons.
interesting to see. It's going to be a full on who can have much more impact at the start first.
Yeah, I mean,
Wait, actually,
it's dragons. This
yeah, it's
dragon
dragons.
game.
I'm blind. Sorry.
No, no, you're
These
all
glasses
right.
aren't for show. I am legitimately blind. Sorry for that. But yeah, so now
The
I'm even
concerted
much more
drink
excited.
got you choked up there. It's but yeah, I mean, as far as as far as dragon decks go, this one's pretty good. You know, he's got the Eclipse Dragon in hand. He has the Ruined Dragon Guard, the Herald of Dragons, and Shyvana. So like, there's not much else that can really go into this open that can be much better for you. Like, you have the Eclipse Dragon to scale you up in that late game. You have Shyvana to start leveling up. You have the Ruined Dragon Guard to start buffing Shyvana early. Like, not much more you could really ask for.
Yeah, the problem is it's kind of reaching that spot, right? It's you have the correct opener. Now you need to get to that spot where the dragons become so powerful. I really do like this deny though. This potential to try and kill a card. It doesn't fall through to kill the the drag. I forget sometimes the name. It's Dragon
Herald
Enchantress
of
or
Dragons.
Herald of Dragons. I don't know why I think of Enchantress when I see her, when I see the card. But yeah, the Herald of Dragons. So it does get taken out, and I think that's the best that Wolford can try to get to make this deck still take time.
Yeah, I mean it's a good setback. Like the Herald Dragons would be nice to have. It would at this point it was only accelerating the Eclipse Dragon because of Grandpa Roji's willingness or not willingness, but Grandpa Roji opting to go for the Ruined Dragon Guard last turn
Yeah,
as opposed to dropping the Shyvana on turn 3. So he's still in a very, very good position otherwise. He still has another Herald of Dragons to drop on one of these off turns where he doesn't have anything to really do with his mana while he's attacking or otherwise. So he still can get some value out of it. The nab though is going to be unfortunate, except for that he pulled a dragon chow,
okay,
which really doesn't do anything.
yeah. It's nice to look at, but it's not going to have an immediate impact. And unless you do get the Herald of Dragons, like just happen, and then you can maybe throw it out. Right now, it's not that big.
hmm Yeah, and the the dragon chow is just like, even though it's on your side, it's still chow for the other player's dragons because it does no damage. It's just going to give them a free fury stack, or in the case of Cramperoji with this rune dragon, it's going to give him two or fury stacks. And
Which
now we
in the
are,
long run may work, but
yeah. I mean, it's a great place to be, but he does have to worry about his health bar because after this attack, he's going to only have 6 total health. And that's very easily taken out just by the spells in Wolf Horu's deck. I mean, he has the Make It Rain, which is potentially 1 damage, Warning Shot, which is 1 damage, takes you down to 4. So definitely not the best place to be in, but he does have the Acel,
Ooh.
and this Acel is without a doubt going to level up at the end of this turn. There's literally nothing that can be done. I mean, there's no way that Wolf Horu has the stuff in hand to clear anything of enough value to deny this level up, because with the recent buff to his dragons, Ace only needs 20 total power on the board, and as long as he has the Eclipse Dragon and one other card on, there's basically no way that he loses it. But now we're
Yes,
going to see
overall,
the open attack.
nice for Ramperoji, not only pulling out the readiness, but being able to actually use it. Even though this attack is not going to get super huge values, it's still
This might
really
be
nice.
lethal,
It
actually.
gets the actually, yeah, because he gets
You get the
a
Crushed
the
Dragon,
over
or the Crushed Eggs.
dragons is amazing. Yeah, that's just
I mean, it all comes down to the change that happened to the crushed egg part of the dragon's clutch, which before the change it only gave +1/+1 to dragons on the board.
yeah,
But since the change, it gives them +1/+1 and overwhelm, which is one of the biggest issues that the dragon deck had, was dealing damage to the Nexus in the interim, because you had to wait until you had a board full of dragons and they attacked and cleared the enemy board before you can start actually like winning the game by dealing damage to the Nexus. But this change to the Dragon's Clutch is probably the most influential, I think, to the Dragons. You could have left all the other buffs that they gave, like to the 1 health to the Herald Dragons, the 1/1 to the Ruined Dragon Guard. All of those are basically useless. Like
yeah.
it all comes down to giving those dragons overwhelm, which is such a strong spell, and it's not even like it's this round; it's permanently
Yeah, it ended
three
up
mana.
it ended up working out perfectly. I think the Aurelion Soul pickup was huge. I also think that even though the chip damage, and I think you pointed out during the what happened during the match, the chip damage was actually mounting up really well.
Hmm.
But the moment that the Aurelion Soul came through and the attack, and there wasn't a force that can actually threaten, so so that Grandparoji was in a really dire strides, then it was just pulling out the Aurelion Soul, and those eggs, like you're saying, that difference in being able to get that over the overpower. I'm pretty sure it's overpower. The overwhelm. I don't know
Overwhelm,
why
yeah.
I blank on these terms, but yeah,
It's
getting the overwhelm there ends up just working effectively. Yeah, I just saw it. Like I legitimately saw it, and I realized, yeah, it's overwhelm actually. But yeah, getting that overwhelm for the dragons is so huge, and when you can stack it on every dragon, it's just so much amount
three
of
mana.
damage that you cannot.
3 mana.
Yep.
That's actually
Hey,
insane.
I love that. So keep it up, keep it like this, right? Don't change it. Let dragons stay like this, strong, please. At least until I can play it, because I want to be able to play it.
Yeah, I mean, you're struggling on the card front. I guess they're a little tedious. You don't have enough epics that you need to really run
Yeah,
a dragon deck, but I'm
I'm
sure
not a
it'll be
mana spender,
around.
so
I'm sure it'll
okay.
hang around as we wait to get into this second game. You know, we've seen obviously the Dragons take game 1 for Grandpa Roji. Wolforu having to turn it around in the next 2. He still has one deck that we don't know that he has the ability to play, whether it's or not the dragons on the brain here, TDS. Whether it's
Dragons
the
are amazing.
pirates or Ezreal Vi, we have still the possibility for one of these.
Yeah, I think there may be chance we're actually going in. I was thinking there may be chance that we see Poppy 6, but yeah, no, it's going to be the repeat of Sejuani GP. I think this time around, if he gets the GP, which he does get, that may be much more impactful. But this time around, it is Warlords. So
Hmm.
it took one game, but now I'm right.
Yeah, I think Warlords Warlords is probably the better deck to play into as Sejuani Gangplank, just because of how strong Sejuani is at shutting down these big attacks that you try to go for with Warlords. Probably the single best counter towards that strategy is frostbiting everything,
It's
and
not
very
letting them
lucky.
attack, pretty much.
Yeah, not letting them attack, like letting them bait themselves into wiping their board. Um, so definitely valuable that Ulfor pulled this pulled the Sejuani early. But wow, a lot of resources going into killing this merciless hunter.
Yeah, interesting. The amount of resources that are going to cleaning up this board. It's not early on; it's already the turn six. But to cleaning up the board, even without the silver and the action, right? Like I do
Mhm.
like the idea of taking some of these cards away, because we have seen where warlords, if they don't have enough manpower in the field, then it can be difficult for them to be able to get those super strong attacks and be able to win the game. But I think without those important cards, it's kind of interesting to see the amount of resources that are getting used.
Right. I mean, it's definitely an interesting like economics problem of like what do we need to keep on the board to make sure we can win? Like what do you want to try and go for Wolforu? But I think Wolforu is just in a very very good spot. Like maybe not so much anymore.
It was good until it wasn't.
Things were great, but now they're not.
Yeah,
Um
that Sejuani changes. Losing that Sejuani changes quite a bit. It just obviously because of the frostbite, it's really really important. So losing that and now also getting the Sivir, yeah, I think ideal situation for Grandpa Roji.
yeah, definitely the place you want to be. Like the Sejuani is, I think, the one card that can shut you down as warlords just because of the frostbite. Um, Curious that he's opting to eat the 5 damage and not go for the block on it, but he does have the Dreadway in hand, so he has the ability to kind of go for this big turn next round. But he's actually going to go for the Cataclysm, which doesn't make sense. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I thought Wolford was Cataclysming.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
I'm confused.
it was Grandpa Roji. Yeah, I was thinking those Wolf Horror have something there, but no, it was Grandpa Roji forcing the Cataclysm. So even taking much more of the manpower, Sejuani does get pulled once again. So at least giving Wolf Horror once again the chance to just frostbite the enemies out, which is ideal here.
Yeah, and it's finally leveled up, so he does not have the warning shot anymore, unfortunately. So he doesn't have that on demand frostbite, but he's gonna have the Sejuani out on the board. He's gonna be able to clear this Sivir. Realistically, nothing in Grandpa Roji's hand can deny this to save the Sivir, much less trade out for the Sejuani. So we're going to be able to see really the ramp up, I think, from Wolfhorror into this win in game two, depending on what Grandpa Roji goes for the
Action.
draw, the Action, which is curious. I mean, I
I
get
was
that
thinking Radiant
Action was
Guardian, no?
yeah, I think Radiant Guardian was the move. I mean, the lifesteal is how you stall out for a much longer game, I think. Like obviously going to attack would only get you one. Oh, never mind. I mean,
Okay,
you pull
yeah.
Action top deck Sivir. That's a definitely a good angle.
Like that, and that actually changes things. Like I
That's
think the Radiant
that's
Guardian
the right
was
play. I'm glad he predicted it. He knew that he has the Sivir coming up, so he's gonna go for the Action. Right
he
play.
he believed in the heart of the cards. Isn't that what
Yeah.
everyone does?
Mm-hmm. But Wolfhorror is going to use the parlay onto the next to make sure that nothing can go off this turn. He sees the Sivir and Akshan. He knows that something
Yeah.
not good could come out of this, so he's going to make sure nothing good can happen or nothing can happen at all. As he makes sure that everything's frostbite, and then drops the Dreadway. So he's setting himself up for a very very big attack next turn.
Yeah, an attack that can end up deciding if it's strong enough. So I like the idea. I also like the idea of not allowing Grand Perogi to get a chance, because this attack that he can build with a severe action already on board can be really huge. But denying any potential of it happening, it's going to be really important for Wolf Horror.
Yeah, I think depending on how they wanted to go with it, they could have done like a make a Redeemer Absolver on Sivir into Cataclysm onto like Sejuani and then lead that into another attack afterwards because that would have leveled up the Sivir with a free attack and then you would have had an attack with all your units afterwards. Would have been a very very good angle I think for the board clear aspect, but since Wolfhorror had that parlay had the ability to frostbite before anything bad could start happening, really just puts him in control of this game, especially with the Dreadway and now the Gangplank on board as well.
Yeah. So now looking at it with the Gangplank and the Dreadway already out, is there realistically a chance that Grand Perogi can, well, first protect or die with this? I think that he has another potential defense with the card that is left in his hand as a unit, but I'm not sure
I'm
if there's chance that he may die here.
he
I'm trying to
I
think about.
I don't think there is a way out, unfortunately. I mean, the only thing that he could do is Cataclysm. The only problem is that he can't clear enough units off of Wolf Horror's board. If he was able to get rid of like the the Dreadway and Sejuani, I think that would have been good. I think that would have been like a way out. Um, but this is definitely not going to, I think, work, unfortunately, just because the Gangplank clear obviously saves his board, but I still don't think it's going to leave him with enough health because the Dreadway doubles all damage dealt. So Sejuani's going to be doing 12 damage through her blocker. So she's going to be doing at least at at least 9, at most or at most 9, at least 7 damage through someone.
Yeah, with that, yeah, with that, I think that like you're saying, even if he clears the GP, it's just close to impossible with that Sejuani being so huge, and the double damage should be enough to get the game.
Yeah, like so you have the Sejuani dealing
It's a bit
12
nuts.
damage through the blocker, plus the 2 damage or 4 damage, I think, excuse me, 4 damage crack shot, and then the 4 damage from
Yeah,
from the Zap Sprayfin. Like even that was enough. Like you could have, if Horu really wanted to, he could have gone for like the BM with just the
the
Zap
Sejuani.
Sprayfin attack.
Okay.
Just attack with Zap Sprayfin, proc the crack shot, and damage with the zap for the lethal. But being a good sport, going for the all out.
Yeah, just getting
But
the win, showing respect by getting the win. I think sounds strange to say it like that, but it was really well done. Still
mhm,
well played by Wolforu. It looked kind of dicey when he lost the first Sejuani, and then
mhm,
the action Sivir came through. But the second
yeah,
Sejuani saving face, being able to survive the game long enough, and really well played. I also think the clear difference from what we saw in the first game, the Sejuani being there. If the
yeah.
Sejuani is there in the first game, there may be a chance.
That's it's a really interesting dynamic because obviously the Gangplank is super strong. Like Gangplank can win a game by himself, but Sejuani is really what sets those cards up. Like makes it so that it's almost impossible to answer. Sejuani is what shuts down a lot of the denial from cards or decks that can like compete with the Gangplank. Like it goes back to the same thing when Swain Sejuani was really big. Like Swain didn't really win the game. It was Sejuani that denied any retaliation for that deck. But Roji still did a really good job. I mean, you mentioned it. It
Yeah.
did look dicey. It could have turned out really poorly if Horu couldn't pull that other Sejuani while Ramp Roji pulled Sivir and Ekshon one after the other.
Yeah, it was a dicey situation, but I think Wolford played it out. Obviously, it was kind of dependent on the Serrani, but after the Serrani was run out, really well played out, really well set up the pace for the game once again, and taking us to a game three, which now it's going to be Warlords once again against Ezra Bai. So we're going to be able to get a taste of the deck if it's going to be strong enough to carry Wolforu into the semifinals, or if Ramperoji with this Warlords is going to be able to push through as well.
So
And already an interesting opening.
yeah, well, Foru played a conchologist, and there was a concurrent timelines option in that pick three, and I I was hoping he would have gone for it because it would have been interesting to see. I mean, concurrent timelines is a very interesting card. It makes it so you can just summon other units, and you still get the summon effect for the original unit you play. And since you're running like an Otterpuss conchologist deck, you don't really need the Otterpuss and conchologist once you play them. They just turn them into something else that potentially has more value after you get your summon effect, but we're gonna play it safe. We're gonna play it tame, but
It is elimination game. So so
yeah,
I
it's
can see
elimination.
why.
Go for the big plays. You're on stream. Like this is either your last game or the game that puts you forward. Like make it a big one. Make it a good. Bring out the the spice.
Yeah, even if that spice may make you lose, it's still worth enough. So I can see the value here from Volporu. I think playing it safe, it's probably most of the time better. But I do like when they go for the big plays, just because it's also another mental advantage, right? Like showing that you're willing to go to risk things to go for the win, showing that you have the balls to do it. It can be a nice mental advantage over your opponent.
Yeah, I mean, once you see the concurrent timelines come out, it's like you're really rolling the dice. You're really playing for that. Like, what can I get away with? I mean, it definitely, like you mentioned, is a great psychological tactic. But other than that, I mean, Grandpa Roji's still playing this really, really well. But Wolfhoru having a really good answer for this landmark with the aftershock, denying the Action level up.
Yeah. Also, although now now gets it with the duel, so still a nice, still nice, nicely done. Even though it gets the landmark does get destroyed, it's still nice.
Yeah, and now you can block with the you can block with the Action as the barrier now, so can go for something special. But going for the predict draw one here and not really getting anything special out of it.
Yeah, could have been better, but I think with already the board that is already set up for Grandpa Roji, not apart from the silver, I don't think there's much that you can like you would like to get right.
Yeah, I mean, you could go for a Sivir. That's really the only card you want from that predict. Like everything else is just sort of like, I guess I'll take it. It's the
Either.
best card that's in there. But you really are fishing for the Sivir there, and I think that's why he went for, I think he went for the Preservarium if I'm not mistaken, which, again, is just looking for the Sivir, drawing more cards than you otherwise would.
Yeah, it's pretty much the long play. It's the long play trying to making it as short as possible to get that
Hmm.
saver. Not depend on a lucky draw, but actually being able to get it as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean that's what you want. Like we've talked about it all day. Every time we see the Warlords deck, it's just that you want the Sivir out. Sivir is actually just how you win the game. It's how you turn it going from a strong position to a deadly position. As we see the Concerted Strike come out, the one thing we have to watch out for though for
Oh.
Grandparoji, aside from this get excited, is there's a mini morph in Wolfhoru's hand, which is a very very sad card. I dislike it very much.
It's the other power. How can you dislike others? It's great when it actually gets value. Which I think that again it's going to get value if the series put out preemptively. So this could be good. Well, if the series ever gets out, right?
Yeah, like the upside for Sivir is that it's going to take more than just the mini morph to get mini morph. You're going to have to spend something else on it to pop the spell shield first. The only issue with that is that you're spending a lot of mana to make Sivir into a 3/3 card, which I mean, making it not a Sivir is very very valuable. It's just
But it's not the worst.
it's not the worst.
Yeah,
It could be better.
could be another a bigger order.
Mm-hmm. As we see Insider Knowledge get created, actually, which is a very, very good card for Wolforu, considering he was almost running dry in his hand and pulling both Ezreal and Vi
Bye.
back to back with that is a very, very good place to be in.
So okay, so with that, he actually has the potential to go for it this turn. Would he? Well, I don't think there's a lot of answers in the hand from Grandpa
I
Roji, so this is a nice turn to go for.
I don't think he goes for the Vi just yet. Like Vi, like we've mentioned, has to be in hand or on board to level up. So she needs to see cards be played before she can really do anything. So I think he goes for the Archivist as well as Ezreal this turn, and I think he just goes for the Ezreal attack if he actually plays this. Um, the only thing he has to watch out for is another Concerted Strike with Grandparoji has.
Yeah, that would be the risk. I was also thinking with that with the poke stick, just to try and draw something else out to try and get out the bias as fast as possible. But the conservative strike getting pulled out, killing the Ezreal, and just like you said, it was the only thing that Wolfhorse should have been safe about, and it does end up getting pulled out. So
Hmm.
the lucky oof.
Going for the 2/2 is interesting. Like I think it's fine. It's the a good play you can make. Unfortunately, like what you really want with that is a quick attack for from the the lucky finds. But I think going at 1/1 probably would have been a little better. Adding another one to that tough health would have been probably better efficiency or value in the long run, being able to block more often and get more heals off. But Grandpa Roji's just in such a good spot to begin with; it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter.
like even though the series is still not up yet, I feel like he's just in a really good spot with everything he can pull out. Like he has a lot of resources in his hand, he has nice units to pull out, and the Ezreal that we previously saw got destroyed as well. So it's not like, apart from the buy, there's not that much that he has to worry about. The mini orders obviously being up there still, but even if get used twice here, yeah, then you're buying yourself a moment where the Seaver it's put out on the field and it's not threatened by the mini morph now. So
Mm-hmm.
it's overall a
Well,
really nice situation for Gambaroji.
there's still too many morphs, so
Yeah, no, but I
I
mean,
don't want that.
but if you can bait them both out, now the Seaver
Mm-hmm.
is completely safe.
Yeah, no, the Sivir is pretty much just safe because it takes a lot of mana to mini morph twice in one turn. I think the one thing that needs to happen is not challenge the station archivist with the Radiant Guardian. I think that's losing too much health, but
And I think it's
again, it
happening.
doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. At this point you still have 20 health, you still have a total three wide board versus nothing. But the Vi is now out, so you do gotta pay a little bit of attention.
Yeah, it is. It does feel like not
Quick attack.
last measure, but okay. Look, finding. Ooh, it could be good. I was going to say it does feel like a kind of forced move out of Wolf Horror. I think that he could have waited a little bit, but it's not like he loses anything by throwing it out now, especially
Yeah,
not with attack.
I mean, Wolfhoru does lose now actually though because of he has to eat
Oh
more
wait, actually,
damage and lose the Vi.
yeah,
So there he was one damage off of getting basically just lethal there. And if Grandparoji had an extra mana, that would have just been game because he has that sharp sight in hand. And Wolfhoru has two mini morphs, unfortunately, and no mana to spend them.
yeah. The thing is now that we actually stand and what Wolf Horror has possible. Well, if he doesn't pull something good here, it's over, right?
The Arsenal! The Arsenal! Nah, the Arsenal's a
Yeah,
really good card, but it doesn't work for this hand or this deck because there's no landmarks being used, which is a very, very unfortunate thing. But now we've seen two of the better finds you get with Lucky Find, the quick attack and the overwhelm. So we're going to just see an attack here thanks to this Aegis, and it's going to just be game.
yeah, I think Volporu tried tried really effectively to make use of the power from the buy Ezreal there, but really nicely played by Grandperoji to deny the Ezreal, then forcing out the buy when there's so little resources already. Like being able to kill that buy as effectively as he did, it just felt like game over. Like at that point, I felt like much more so than the buy being used to try and win. It felt like to try and not lose, and
Morph.
at the end, it kind of happened there. Nice mini morph, but
It's too little, too
it's now a 5-5 mini order.
late. It's unfortunately too little, too late here, but we will be able to see. I think he's gonna play one more unit, and then we'll be able to see the win.
Yeah,
But I think it comes down to like Grandpa Roji. Obviously he pulled really well in this game, but he also played cards like as he, not even like as he pulled them, like as he played them reactively to Wolfhoru's plays, and it worked out really well just because Wolfhoru wasn't finding the answers. Like Wolfhoru played Ezreal, there was a concerted strike. Wolfhoru played the second Ezreal, there was a second
yeah.
concerted strike. Wolfhoru found the Radiant Guardian. He kept the Vikoran Vagabond alive for like 5 attacks. It struck 5 times. He was able to get like 3 lucky finds and turn this Radiant Guardian into like a monster that eventually had to be mini morphs to be like taken out of like
And
taken out
even
of
then,
play. And even then, it didn't matter because he already brought Wolfhoru down to that point where it was like 1 health versus 20.
yep. Like with Wolf Huru, and I said it with the buy, but it felt overall like that in game where, and this is in no attempt to flame or anything like that, but it felt much more so moves to try and not lose the game than to
Mm-hmm.
try to win them. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a clear difference because it's kind of those, even though those moves look proactive, in reality are are moves to keep you there and not die. Meanwhile, every move that Maparoni pulled off was there to try and not only answer,
Hmm.
but put him one step closer to victory. So I think that that important difference in how Grandparoni played it made a huge difference in the game overall. And I really like how he played, because obviously the like a good start is always important in the hands and how you draw, obviously. But I think that the setup that he had to get the bodies there, because he never, I'm pretty sure he never pulled out the saber. So it was mainly playing around with the action, and or no, actually he did pull, but it was destroyed. I think. I
He able
think
be able to pull the action, but the action was cleared out. He couldn't find the Sivir, but it didn't
yeah,
matter.
I was thinking if he pulled out the silver or not, and it was destroyed. But
I
yeah, like he
I
played
don't
really
think he did.
effectively without the action.
Hmm.
I'm not 100% sure now, so I'm not going to win much more. But I think that he made the right moves at the right moments to keep himself, to not only keep himself in the game, but get as much value as possible. And he consistently not only kept his board full, but he also his resources were always kind of there. He had good resources, good answers to be able to fight back whatever Wolforu had, and at the end it pays. He wins the game, he wins the series, moves now on to the semifinals. Our defending champion not going to be able to defend the crown once again, but it's going to be a new champion, so it's always exciting. We're going to go to a quick break before going to the semifinals, but don't go anywhere. Should be an exciting matchup still up. And welcome back once again to the LoR tournament. We're on to the semifinals. We had a little bit of a delay there. Something's happening. Hershey's to be at fault here, so nothing bad here there. But we're going to have Fansora against Unhelpful Yoda. Wrongly written, I think, but it's Fansora against Helpful Yoda. An interesting matchup. We saw their decks. You have some opinions on one of those decks. I'm really interested to hear those. I don't know much about the deck. I think that it seems strange. Even to me, it seems strange. It's Broma Radiant Soul, but it just feels like it just seems like it doesn't have a place, right?
I I mean, I don't think it's going to work. I think it's just like the win. Like, what is the win condition? Like, your half your deck is below 3 cost, and none of them really have any power. It's a 1/1, a 0/3, a 2/3, a 3/3. Like, all of your cards are very, very weak, and there's no way to buff them up. And then you have an Asol and three three of the Freljord monsters, the It That's There, She Who Wanders cards that are designed to wipe the enemy board. But even at that point, like, I don't think they're very useful. Like, the one is a 10 mana that kills cards with 4 or less power, and by the time you're playing a card that's 10 mana, you're
It's
playing
already
a
late.
soul, and then you're waiting another turn to play that other card, and then it's also too late because all the cards on the other person's board are likely going to have 4 or more power. Like, I just don't see like where you turn this into a win if you're unhelpful Yoda, and it's going to be the first the
It's
first
actually the
deck we
first deck.
see,
Okay.
and he has both A Souls and Feel the Rush.
So this
So
is where we get proven right or wrong with how powerful this deck is,
I
and it's going
mean,
to be against a Johnny Timo.
I'm
So
just gonna say I'm gonna get proven right, and he threw away the Feel the Rush.
yeah, he took both Aurelians and the Field of Rush out, and I don't think that what he got back is that better. Like
You need
obviously the cost is better, but
you need to have one of the Feel the Rushes in your hand or one of the Acels in your hand so that you can use the faces of the old ones that you top decked. Because the faces of the old ones only works if you behold an 8+ cost card, and you're only going to get that if you have an 8+ card in your hand, and you're only going to be able to play that if you use the faces of the old ones. Like, it's it's so strange, the like this deck in the first place, and then how we're using it.
yep. I cannot I cannot say much more. Like I feel like everything that has been shown to a certain degree has kind of been strange with this particular deck. Obviously, we still need to see how it develops, but I just feel like with this deck from Fansora, it's just going to be a slow but sure death, and I think that plays perfectly to what Unhelpful Yoda's deck has because it's going to take time, but Fansora wants that time with the Teemo deck.
Yeah, and that's you mentioned Fansora wants the time. The Teemo deck is about
Yeah.
killing you slowly, and if you want to play a game for a long game, like 10 rounds plus, like you're not gonna have that time if you're playing against Teemo. If the team is allowed to like reach the point where he's planting 5 shrooms in your deck or doubling the amount of shrooms in your deck, it's not gonna go well. And if you're playing this game to the point where like you're using 10 cost cards, you're probably running out of health at that point.
Yeah,
Um,
it's legitimately not only playing against the enemy, but also playing against like a minefield that is your board, that is your deck. So it's a risky situation. I'm surprised that we are seeing it happening for Unhelpful Yoda, that he will be willing to go for this, but maybe there's something in the deck that he knows that it's going to change everything, right? Maybe.
I mean, the card that he's hoping is going to change everything is the Feel the Rush, and I
Which he
think
threw.
yeah, which he put back into his deck, which is very curious. And then he's also blocking with the face of the old ones, delaying that point where he can reach um like where he can reach 10 mana, where he can reach these higher cost cards that he needs. You know, he played the Targon's Peak, a very unique card, came out a couple expansions ago, reduces the cost of one of your cards in hand to 0 and the one of your opponent's cards in hand to 0. But when your whole deck is split between super expensive and super cheap cards, the odds that it's going onto a card that's already 1 mana, like the Sparkleologist, is pretty high, and you're saving what, 1 mana at that point because you're trying to get save mana on your 10 cost card, and your 10 cost card is only really useful when the enemy has a full board. Like the deck just doesn't make sense to me. But
It is kind of betting on lower odds to try and get something good for yourself, and in an already odd depending game that you don't really want to put even harsher odds against you. It just feels kind of hard to play. Like it feels like you're putting yourself against a wall by yourself, not by your enemy but by yourself. And even though there's opportunity for it to go better for you, it's really relying on something really random happening, which I really don't think that's, and I don't want to mention a lot of the randomness of the game or the like, but it's really dependent on that, and that's, I don't think, something that you should try and play forward to, look forward to play with.
like I've played a lot with the Targon's Peak. I think it's a fun card. It's cool to troll around with, but like you need to just load your deck with expensive cards. Like every turn, you need to be playing a card that's like 8+ mana for free, or else you're just not really getting a lot out of it. And I mean, he's creating a lot of 10 cost cards now,
Yeah.
so next turn one of them is going to be free. Is it going
So
to be the
value's there.
Scourge? Is it going to actually be a useful card, or is it going to be the She That Wanders? And is it not going to really be able to do anything?
Yeah,
Is the question.
putting himself into those odds can be hard, but like he's at least going through that path or of putting high cost cards on his hand so that he can get value. We'll see what it, and oh, okay. I think it's not the worst. I think the Scorch would have been the best, but
No,
at
I
least
think the
that
Scourge
at
would
zero
be
cost is
useful,
fine.
but no, I was about to say this. You don't play the infinite mind. You don't play the mind splitter yet. You play that once the Sejuani comes out, because you need to stop the Sejuani from being able to do anything. And the infinite mind splitter does that every turn. It stuns them every turn.
And we
You
have
need to
already
be able to
seen what the
stop the
Sejuani is capable
Sejuani.
of, right?
Yeah, the Sejuani's already leveled up as well.
Yeah, the value from this Sejuani already, like you're saying, not waiting for and knowing that this Sejuani may come through and not waiting for that. I think that the fact that he's in really in a lot of need to actually put down some cards was coming through, but now the Sejuani with those cards that are so huge will get so much value here.
So, I mean, I spent this whole game bashing him, but he's now in a great position to win this just off of this She That Wanders clearing the whole board. I still dislike. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. Actually, Fansora is a genius, and he frostbit the whole board so that everything now
Everyone.
gets killed by unhelpful is Yoda whole board that he spent this whole time leveling up or going wide with the mind splitter, the She That Wanders, the It That Stares. All those things just get cleared off because Sejuani can frostbite them and make it so that they also count as being less than 4 power and getting obliterated.
Yeah, so it's not only denying the potential from you getting cleared, but it's, or not denying the potential, but it's making the clear happen, but making your opponent suffer from that clear as well. I really nicely played with the Sejuani, and now it's going to be a little bit harder for Unhelpful Yoda to come back into position. He does have the Scourge now back into zero, so maybe it's something that he can play this time around and try and force. But the Sejuani is still so huge for him.
I think you can go for something good here. I think you need to go for.
Trying to clear the Sejuani.
Sorry.
I was thinking try and clear this journey maybe so that you can force so that you can take it away at least. I would think.
Yeah, I mean, clear the Sejuani is definitely the right play. I feel like I also would have gone for the other It That Stares just to get more damage off. Like that probably could have been lethal if he played the other It That Stares. It would have forced the three sisters come out from Fansora, most likely being the Entomb or just the Frostbite to deny a lot of this damage that's about to kill Sejuani. But
I
it's
think the
still going
sisters,
to
yeah,
come out. It's still
sisters are
going to
coming
come out,
down.
but it would have just forced something potentially different.
Yeah, it would have been probably a harder situation for Fensora because of how many things he would have to try and protect from, but it's still forcing out the three sisters that in the next turn now with the Eat That Stirs, it's going to at least get the value on the, I want to call it laser beam. I don't know why.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean,
I just saw the laser and I just jumped into my mind the laser beam.
Oh, yeah, it is
It is a
it's
laser
a
beam.
laser beam. It's a laser beam. But so I spent this whole game dumping on Yoda's deck, but somehow he's come to the point where he's in a very good position to win, especially with this Feel the Rush now finally coming back out. Um, I still just don't like it. I still feel like there is too much left to chance.
Yeah, it's a situation where even though you're put into a good spot because of the cards that you end up pulling out, it's not the ideal situation to try and force yourself into a bad spot from a start. And once again,
Mm-hmm.
getting like the power from the freeze is so good.
Yeah. No, of course. Like that's definitely like the way to go for this. Like it's just like he almost had a really good play. He almost did something really good with the she who wanders clearing out all of Fansora's board. I didn't like him not or I didn't like him using the time splitter early to stun like two random units that he was going to clear anyways. But Fansora's play with the frostbite to make sure that Yoda's own board also got cleared was very good. I thought that was a very smart play.
Yep, overall, I think Pansora has answered accordingly. There's still a good enough chance for a helpful Yoda to maybe pull through. Like, I think he should.
So
Okay, he's
this
not
is
getting
still
the threat.
lethal. This is still lethal because the scourge is going to give everything 2/2.
Yeah, it's
So
213.
yeah, there's no way out of this. There's no more frostbite left either. So this is going to be lethal. It's going to be Yoda winning game one with this deck that
That you hate.
I I really just don't like.
But it does work. Like it has shown now, at least it shows the case that
Mhm,
it works. I think the problem that we both have is the fact that even though it can work, it enhances even much more the fact that it's so RNG based. Like
mhm,
there's times that, and I think we critiqued a little bit of some decks about this with the fact that they are sometimes relying on one card, but this deck particularly it's relying on so many things going well, and if they
mhm.
don't go well, then it just completely falls flat. I think that it still was really well played by helpful Yoda getting to those stages, even though he maybe didn't need to discard some of the cards at the start. It still fall into place. But overall, I think that for a one in a at a time situation for it to work, it's okay. But I don't think we're going to see it again.
Yeah, likely not. But one deck that I do actually like here is this is a Wrath Ziggs deck. I think it's very unique in its in its interactions. I think it's a very good deck as far as like it functioned in a lot of the same way that that Yasuo like early Yasuo Noxus stun decks did, where it just sort of like slowly clears the board and then you get like a good attack off. But this deck utilizes all of the perks of Shurima and the Bandle City, so very strong.
Yeah, honestly, when I saw a little bit of it, I just felt like this deck seems so bothersome to play against because of how many ways there are to clear the board and clear you out of options. So I'm interested to see how helpful Yoda plays this, and Fensura repeating deck. So going to be interesting to see how he goes this time around with the Teemo Sejuani.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens because the Zerath is going to be very threatening to the Teemo. The Zerath, I think, if I remember correctly, it targets the weakest unit
Yeah.
with its damage, so it's always going to be the Teemo. Until the Teemo is gone, it's going to be the Teemo. Which, when you're playing a Teemo deck, you want to keep your Teemo safe, but that's one of the perks I think that this deck has going for it is the fact that it kind of prevents Teemo from being played at all. And additionally, like just the fact that it has so much clear into this kind of deck where all of the units are relatively weak is also just a huge benefit.
Yeah, apart from the Sejuani, realistically, there's not much units that are s- super high cost or super strong, right? So this deck may just get enough in value here.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens um as far as like how fast Yoda can get these cards on the board.
Hey, yep. Are you back? Okay. Uh, uh, just a quick thing. Then we need to see it back. Okay, so sorry for that. Technical complications. We can continue. I think nothing super strange happened in the meanwhile. So
I think we saw the Hungry Owlcat get played, and the Hungry Owlcat got um, vulnerable by the Roiling Sands. So nothing
yeah,
too crazy has happened yet.
yeah, we haven't missed interaction between Serath and Timo yet. So we can get our share of Timo dying later on. It's fine.
Yeah, but as far as like the state of the game, I think both players are in a pretty good spot. You know, Fansora has units out on the board, which is what he wants. He's getting the plunder procs off, which is what he wants. And Yoda also has a pretty good start too. He has Zerath on the board. He has landmarks that are dying, leveling that up, getting that passive off, getting the damage off, and then he also still has the devout and the sarcophagus landmark. So he's gonna get some strong units in 2 turns, and he still has stuff to block with right now. So
I think that he can even just let. Yeah, he can block the the electric Jordal and just let the attack pass, which he did. Like the attack wasn't going to be that big, so I think that that is the better play and keeps the Seraph still there and not taking any damage. And like you're saying, the landmarks will pop up soon. He also has 2/6 on hand, so the value from his stack will just spike really heavily next time or in the
yeah,
next 2 turns.
and I really like the play he just went for. On Help Yoda, he sacrificed the devout. It turned into the sarcophagus. It had 3 turns left, so he plays the desert naturalist, which usually is a bad card because it destroys your own landmark to summon a Grumpy Rock Bear. But it destroys a landmark to summon the Grumpy Rock Bear, and since the sarcophagus revolves around destroying itself to summon something, then
It's
you're
just
just
accelerating process.
it's like the discard deck. It's just
Yeah,
extra value, extreme value, but. He's now in actually an insanely good position. He has 4, 10, 12. He has 16 damage on the board right now. So he's he's gonna be able to get off a pretty big attack should he decide to attack with everything. But even if he decides to keep the Zerath back or the Naturalist back, he's gonna be able to threaten a lot of stuff.
yeah, and he's and like I don't want to make much more, but he still has the potential from the 6 as well. So threatening the Nexus in the next turns is not a it's not something that seems impossible, right?
Yeah, no, I think
Actually, with a
it's
level up.
something that's very, very much a threat now. I mean, the Ziggs is coming out. The Ziggs obviously going to be a huge part of these attacks just because of his ability to clear his blocker and deal damage to the Nexus, which is important to protecting himself during his attack since he doesn't have quick attack, he doesn't have tough, all those other things that usually help people that are based off of attacking to deal damage. But looks like we're going to not see the Ziggs attack come out this turn actually.
Yeah, maybe feeling that there may be a threat to the 6. There is a Three Sisters, so that may be one thing
Mm-hmm.
that may threaten a helpful Yoda. But I think that he could have still gone for the attack with the 6. He has another one in hand, so it's not
Yeah.
like losing this is the worst.
No, I think attacking with Ziggs would have been the correct move because it would have forced out resources to try and threaten the Ziggs on this attack, whether it's the Three Sisters or it's the Troll Chant, try and clear that. And it would have been a ton of mana spent for, like you mentioned, a Zig that's already in hand as a backup again. I mean, maybe Yoda's looking to do something with this Zig spell. I'm not really sure what the bouncing grenade does, but it's definitely a lot of potential.
Yeah, it's much more so than immediate damage, something that maybe he will try to use later on. So maybe he just feels that he can get an even more powerful attack in the coming turns than now.
I mean, I think he's just going for the board clear because that's what the Zerath deck is all about. Like it's like we mentioned, it's like the Ziggs deck. It's about or no, it's about a Yasuo. It's like a Yasuo deck. It's about clearing the enemy's board, making sure they don't have any units to attack with or block with, and then you open with a big attack with Yasuo and some other strong Noxus units. So it's the same idea. Like Zerath is just slowly clearing the board, slowly making sure that there's nothing that Fensora can really do to answer a big attack, and then he goes all out with these devouts, with the zigs, with the bouncing bombs, the what have you, to try and get a big attack off.
Yep, and I think that already setting himself up for that really effectively. I think that this is the better one. Yeah, I was thinking like you should just come. He can just commit for the using the one to just clear up the Timo. I think that and
Mm-hmm.
getting the draw is also good enough. Getting extra damage out of that potential draw. Although he may, yeah, I was thinking maybe there was a chance that he just draws out some of damage out as well from the shrooms, but I don't think it's going to be that important that it affects his attack.
I mean, there's just so many other ways that you can clear the rest of these teamos. I think it just doesn't really matter. There's so many different ways that you can go about this as unhelpful Yoda. I mean, the game is pretty much entirely in your favor. You have two Perseverance out. You're going to be able to keep your hand full. Whereas Fansora's almost completely out of steam. He just has the 2-3 sisters. He just has the Teemo, which is not long for this world. The next turn, it's going to be taken down by this Zerath. the the only there really is no bright side. I was going to say the only bright side for Fansora is that there's this or that coming into hand, but even should he have the like a good card like a Sejuani come out, there's not much he can do. He can just sort of try and survive until the point where he can try and answer with something. And I think the only way he gets out of this is with the Sejuani.
Which unluckily he hasn't been able to pull out. So it can be a nice attempt to go for the journey, but I think that already with the resources that unhelpful Yoda has at his disposal, even a Sejuani may not be enough at this point.
Yeah, he's using a lot of resources, I think, to try and clear the Ziggs, which, from Fansora's perspective, is the right move. Like, clear the
Yeah,
Ziggs, look for the Sejuani, clear the Zerathos Sejuani. Like, that's the correct line, I think, to take if you're Fansora. The only issue is that he doesn't see what we see, which is that
there's
there's
another one.
two Zeraths in hand and another Ziggs in hand, and he's now actually going to use the the stasis to play the other Ziggs. Since there's technically no Ziggs on the board, it's no longer a Zig spell. It's just another Ziggs unit. And then the next turn, he's gonna have two Ziggs on board.
Yeah, so insane. Yeah, essentially getting enough damage. Really nice. Over, I really gotta give credit to Unhelpful Yoda. I think that he played this so well in the overall way that the game went because of how many like the amount of things of correct things that he pulled off in the game were so well done. It was waiting the time for the correct times to pull some of these cards. But for example, the attack that he didn't pull with the six at some point that we were thinking he can pull off an attack here, but at the same time waiting the time for then utilize the six much more effectively and get an even better attack.
There was really no rush. Like the game was
Yeah,
totally in unhelpful Yoda's hands. Like his deck, even more so than Sejuani's, is just as comfortable like just waiting it out. Which I think he played really well. Like he knew that he can do whatever he wants. Really, just he knows that he has the Zerath and the Ziggs on board. And then as he kept pulling duplicates, he's like, all right, well I'm fine. Even if these get cleared by Sejuani, even if this gets cleared by some other method, like I'll just keep playing these cards and I'll keep having this advantage. So I think it's really well played by him. Um, Still don't like the first deck. He was able to win on it, so I'll apologize. I'll redact my statement. Maybe it's something that's off meta. Maybe it's something that's
it's based on
counter
tastes,
meta.
so it's okay.
Yeah, it is based on your taste, and if you're comfortable on something, then you can make it work. So once again, congratulations to Yoda for moving on to the next stage.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like just like you, I'm still not convinced on the deck, but for me, it's a deck that you can pull off once, and if it works, great. If not, it's not the end of the world because I think that the other two decks that Unhelpful Yoda does have can be really effective as well. So overall, I think that having an interesting strategy mixed in with the more conventional decks, or at least more powerful enough decks, can be really fun because it also forces now your opponent to think, do I want to play against this? And looking now at the fact that we are heading into the grand finals in just a second, this can be a really important edge that Unhelpful Yoda may have. So don't go anywhere. We're going to a quick break. Grand finals coming up. The last match of the night, the last match of the tournament. Whoever wins, it's the champion. And we're going to have fun seeing this. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in a sec. and welcome back, maybe for the last time in tonight. Yeah, I think pretty much for the last time because it's a grand final. So yeah, welcome back for the grand finals,
Grand finals. They play
grand
against
finals.
us.
Yeah, it's
The
going to be
final
an
boss.
exciting match between unhelpful Yoda and Boyd. It should be a really interesting match. One running much more normal decks, I would say, much more meta decks, really conventional things. The other has the deck that Tom hates with all his life, and some other two, which we have seen.
Well,
So it's going to be interesting.
if I had to say a deck I hate with all my life would be
Yeah,
one that
which one
has
do you hate?
mini morph, and aloof travelers. That's a deck that I would not like to play against. But no,
Okay, fair enough.
I just don't think that it should work well into a lot of these decks that we will be seeing, like decks that Void is running. He's running Draven Scion discard. He's running
I really hope we
Warlords,
see
and
it.
he's running the Gangplank Sejuani deck that we've seen so much of. So like I think all of these decks can really put pressure onto um onto Helen Yoda's deck that he's brought, especially when Targon's Peak is making some of these big make or break cards for Void's decks potentially free. Not
Yeah.
basically free, potentially free.
Yeah, it's really dependent on that, and we're going to see if it works out. I hope that we see the Draven Siren. It's one of the decks that I've been more excited. Sadly, the first time that we saw that around that there was a potential to see it, it wasn't played. So I'm hopeful that Boyd brings it out. But like you're saying, I think that most of these decks do have good ways to answer what this deck from Unhelpful Yoda has. I think that particularly Sejuani GP should be the main concern because I think that just like how the Dragon's deck that we have seen can get countered by this Sejuani freeze and the consistent just denial of cards. The GP Sejuani can do this, but I think way better than what the team of Sejuani was doing. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see. I think that if it comes out, it's going to be hard for that deck to be able to shine just as bright. And I think that Angel Yoda would just decide to play all the other decks much more, just because of how much these other good decks from Void can have an impact in the match.
I'm very curious to see how it plays out as well. I would like to see, you know, the Zig Zarath again. I think that deck is very interesting. It's very um like if we were to see that again, I think it would be okay. Um I think it would probably be best into the Warlords deck just because of how weak some of the Warlords cards are. But, Warlords also has a lot of stuff that can threaten the cards that you need to keep on the board for
Yeah,
that deck. Like you want to keep the Ziggs on the board, you want to keep the Zerath on the board, and between like Merciless Hunter, between Cataclysm, between all that other fun stuff, it's very easy to threaten those pivotal cards for that deck.
yeah. I think that particular matchup would be much more contested between the two decks. I think that the Warlords, just like you say, do have cards that can be threatened by the Six Zerath, but in the same venue, they can threaten the Six Zerath. So it would be an interesting match to see. I also think that even though we mentioned the power from the Zerath and from the Sivir and the Action, they are also low cost cards. So it can have an interesting effect in the match if they do end up going with those decks. It would be at least an interesting match to see who can set the pace first and who can keep the momentum going for each of for themselves in that match.
Hmm. Yeah, and as I hope we get into the game pretty quick, so we can start talking about
Yeah.
what is. So aside from that, like looking at both players, all three decks they brought, I think that there's potential for it to go both ways. I'm not really sure what you ban if you are if you are Yoda. I mean, all of these decks are not fun to play against. They're very good. Um, I mean, the best case scenario is that you get lucky with your draw, but it's definitely going to be an uphill battle. But I mean, I said that
Yeah.
last game and he 2
And
0'd.
he won.
Yeah, he 2 0'd. Yeah, like um
I was thinking he probably doesn't ban the Sejuani deck just because he has already beaten it.
mhm.
So that is kind of another thing that plays into the mental games is if you beat something already, you are much more less likely to want to take it away because you feel confident enough to take it. So I feel like that is something that we may see the Sejuani GP not getting banned, and then if it actually does end up working out for and helpful Yoda, then we may see a situation where Boyd may be put against the walls. Not only because he will be one game down, but because now you have to be a little bit careful about that deck from a helpful Yoda that is kind of random. And I think that yeah, I think it was taken away, but we're going to get to see the Zeroth 6 against Action Saber first. It's going to be really fun then.
I was gonna say like I think if I'm Yoda, the deck I'm banning is this the Warlords, but apparently that's not that's not the game. It's going to be Warlords into this Wrath Ziggs deck. Hmm.
And already, I think a good first draw for Void, getting the action at the start as well. Even though he hasn't pulled it out, he's already starting to be able to maybe mount the kind of power that he wants. And another one, okay, so already putting himself in a good spot with those two action draws.
I think obviously getting action out early is a very powerful angle for any Warlords deck. I mean, we've talked about it all day that like you really want this Sivir to start winning the game, but having the action out early is definitely the a good place to start. As far as unhelpful Yoda, I think it's interesting that he got rid of the the Zerath and
Yeah,
his mulligan, which is one of the cards that you need to kind of win this game, just so you can keep clearing the enemy's board. But maybe he's looking for something that can protect it better, looking for something that can stop, like, save it from a threat, because he probably knows all too well that there's a Merciless Hunter somewhere in the Warlords deck. There's Cataclysms in the Warlords deck. There's so many things that can potentially ruin your day
yeah.
as a Ziggs or Wrath.
The thing is, I think that just keeping it there for the potential, it would have been still good. Like you don't have to just immediately throw it out. Like I think just keeping
Mm-hmm.
it there for actually having the card, because it may just end up happening that you don't get back the card and you pretty much lose a lot of value out of that. So I think that just keeping the Zerath wouldn't have been that bad. But he still is able to find a lot of chip damage onto the side of Void, but Boyd gets the Sivir and the action. I think the Sivir could have waited a little longer, but still getting the two most important pieces of the deck going already.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could wait. I also think like you probably want to get it going sooner than later, because there is the possibility that like if you play it too late, the Ziggs and Zerath could potentially just one shot the Sivir before it's able to do anything.
Yeah, that is a potential risk that I can see happening, especially because those two target the weakest enemies. The Zero targets the weakest enemy, if I'm not wrong. So if in a situation where Sivir and Akshan are in the same place, you can target one of the two so easily and kill them. So I can understand why you would want to lay out and try to make them as strong as possible before it becomes hard to fight against. And the fact that the Zero was thrown away, it does play in favor of Void in that regard.
Yeah, and going going for this Desert Naturalist is a very good idea. I think just because of the value that it provides between destroying your own landmarks and summoning another rock bear, like we've talked about. Excuse me, but it's just so interesting how we're going forward with this. I mean, he's using the Sivir to block the rock bear, which I don't think he has something in his hand that can save it.
Sharp side to try and keep the action alive. Yeah, I'm kind of interested why you risk like I understand the damage that will come through, but I think that you're willing to put yourself in a little bit of a lesser health to keep the saber. It is
Well,
earlier in
that
the
would have
game
left
though,
him at
so
one health. That would have left him at one health if he didn't block it.
yeah. So he's in a tough situation at that spot. Then like he's forced to the saber. So using so great to Yoda for the previous play where he blows the stun onto the 5-5, because that at least makes it so that you have to force the Seaver out.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And now with this other Pokestick, he's forcing even more resources out to try and keep to for he's forcing more resources out of Void for Void to try and keep cards on the board, which he desperately needs both to clear Yoda's board, but also have stuff to block
The Seaver
eventual
out.
damage
Oh.
that he needs. But now the Sivir comes out as well is very good for the future of Void's game. Being able to potentially turn it around.
Yeah, I do think important though that a 6 was pulled out by Unhelpful Yoda, and there's a chance that one of his next attacks may involve the 6 as well. So potentially threatening, but the Void now has strengthened his board a little bit better, so it's not like he's a risk. Although now the Zeroth as well, he cannot summon it now. It's next turn.
Yeah, he can go for Ziggs this turn if he wants, but I don't think he will. I think he's gonna try and save the mana just so he can go for this Unleash Energy. Oh, but instead he's just gonna go for the Unleash Energy. I'm not really sure what he's gonna do with that though. He's not gonna be able to give anything enough health to survive either the Sivir or the Action. They'll both have 3 health.
Can I to try and take out the action instead? Okay.
Oh, I think he was trying to go for the stun onto one of the champions, but since the Vicarian had 5 health, it is technically the strongest card on the board. But aside from that, I think, yeah, that's I think that's what he was hoping for. Unfortunately, it didn't play out like that.
I can see that. Yeah, I was thinking maybe he also would want to try and make the attack from the action harder to try and maybe force out another bit of resources to protect the action or the
Mm-hmm.
Sivir with the buffed up unit that he had in the board, but doesn't go for that. He still has the Serath and the Six out, so there may be a chance that we see it out.
Yeah, but Void has been very, very conservative in his play because he's had this Merciless Hunter since turn 1 and he hasn't played it, specifically waiting for one of these champions to come out. And now we see the Sharp Sight being used, and I assume the Grappling Hook's going to come out. Where the Grappling
Yeah.
Hook's going to be used on the Vagabond so that he can strike the Ziggs. Now the Stasis is going to be used so that the Ziggs is alive, but it's just forcing resources out of Yoda that he no longer has to protect this this Ziggs, which will now be challenged by the Merciless Hunter.
Yeah, so turning really nicely turning around the situation, putting not only getting getting himself with the power of the Sivirak Shen, but now putting himself in a spot where he
Oh wait,
forced out the Six. Oh wait,
wait. So Ziggs, if Ziggs attacks, he does 2 damage. All right, so Ziggs has to somehow survive this round. If Ziggs can survive, if Ziggs can survive this round, then the game is over.
he does get
And
pulled. So is there a chance?
so
I
so I
think there
think
is
what
no.
he's going for is he has the unleashed energy. He's gonna
Yeah.
destroy the minefield and stun stun one of these cards. Yeah, the Sivir. What stuns
Ooh.
the Sivir? So yeah, so Ziggs lives here and now it's going to survive. And then next turn the Preservarium is going to count down, and Ziggs is going to deal 2 damage to the Nexus on round start, and it's just gonna be game.
Important keeping the Six there, like keeping being able to stun down the Saber was crucial there, but he also stunned down the 5/5 unit at the start as well. So making it so that the
Mm-hmm.
Saber was the strongest.
Yeah. Oh. So the ricochet, unfortunately, since it's the way it's worded, it does 1 damage to 5 units and the enemy nexus as opposed to just 5 times.
It was.
Or it does damage 5 times to random enemies in the
Ooh.
nexus, and it's could have done all 5 to Ziggs, but unfortunately it did not. So
It was a
Ziggs
last
will
ditch
live.
effort. It was a last ditch effort at that point to try and get
Mm-hmm.
the Six clear, because if you don't kill the Six there with that, it's game over, as we saw with Preservatorium, I think it is called. So getting full value out of the Six, and really nice play by Yoda, by helpful Yoda, because he does stun the previously the 5/5 cost, making it so that then you can keep save your Six with that stun
Mm-hmm.
onto the Sivir. So keeping the Six alive for as long as he can, and then being able to win the game. Really nicely played by him. I think it was a really close game, because if he doesn't pull
Mm-hmm.
off that, then the next turn for Boyd, he has a really strong attack, especially if the Seaver does level up at that point.
Yeah, I think both players played that game really well, and it just sort of turned out in favor of of Yoda. I mean, he played it really well with the stasis into using both of those those destroy landmark cards to buff up your other units, and the final round, the play of using the minefield to stun the vagabond into destroying that to stun again was just very, very smart overall. And it honestly could have gone both ways. I think both players played very slow, very calculated, and keeping the hunter until like you see the champion on the board. A lot of players usually would have used that hunter earlier, try and clear something else that's potentially a threat. But that deck specifically is all just, oh, I'll just sit on my back line, I'll just sit on the board and just keep doing damage with landmarks.
Yep, 100%. I think that showcasing the strength of the deck with a six Seraph there, and we didn't even see the Seraph out. It was mostly playing around the fact that you can threaten with the six with a Nexus Power, but also a lot of the previous cheap damage that was going down because it was a lot of damage that Boyd had to play around with. Even though he was doing a nice job to keep himself alive for as long as possible, he did take so much damage previously. So ends up falling. I think that because of the apart from the fact that Yoda played it as well as he could, but also because of the fact of so much health being lost at the starting turns, it made it so that even though he could survive long enough, it at the end didn't matter that much. Now going into game two, we do have I think it is by yeah it's by Israel against
The Warlords
Warlords
again.
again. Yeah,
Yeah, and already into turn 4, we've sped through these these early rounds. I have to imagine it's only been the loping telescope that attacks to get this 2 damage off. Nothing else really seems to have gone off, but we maybe we saw an action and the action get cleared by a mystic shot. But aside from that, there's not much that's really been happening. Both units are pretty healthy. I mean, Void down to 13 health, but the Sivir coming out is going to be a very very big turn for him.
yeah, it is a similar situation with the first game. Not that the Sivir coming out early on, but with the cheap damage coming through Boyd already at 13 health. So he needs to be careful about this because it was one of the reasons for why he lost the first game. So I'm expecting to see him try to deviate a lot of the potential damage coming through. Cheap damage can actually be a factor, and especially I think with this Ezreal buy deck, where a lot of cheap damage that can get accumulated can be meaningful later on.
Yeah, no, that's just what we saw last game. Is that
Yeah.
all that chip damage eventually set it up so that Ziggs could win in like 2 turns with enough landmarks out, and now we're going to see Void try and go for a little bit of board clear and some damage, but the sump, excuse me, the sump spell is going to clear out the excuse me the Merciless Hunter. And looking at Yoda's hand, it looks like he has some pretty interesting stuff. I mean, he has the Vi. Obviously, the Vi is watching these cards get played. The Vi is leveling up, which is what we talked about earlier. How if it's not in hand or on board, it's not working towards that level up, which is so important. And he also has the Glorious Revolution in his hand, which is a pretty interesting card in that it turns everything into augment and created by Glorious Revolution, so that every card is just level or buffing each other up with this augment.
Which I think, which for the value of the Israel and the Vi, it's going to be huge if he does
Mm-hmm.
end up getting to the point where he can use it. I think that obviously it's still too early to go for that because of the 10 cost, but I think that there's a point where Yoda may just be setting up for that to just give full value to his units.
Yeah, he could go for it as early as next round should he save any of this spell mana, but instead he could just go for more units. Yeah, and he's gonna go for some more units, more stuff on the board to try and keep things at least healthy as far as his Nexus goes. But here comes the single combat. It's going to clear out this clear out the Ezreal. There's not much that can really be done for that.
Yeah, I think nice choice to go and clear the Ezreal out. Ezreal can be threatening, even though he's a low because you need and all that. He is threatening to a certain degree, so I think that clearing it out can be good. And it also set up for the potential here without the action out to begin with the power of the zero and the action. So I think that making himself as strong as possible, Void right now, even though it's not the strongest he can be, it's still a really nice attack that he can pull off here.
I think that I think that you're totally right there. I mean, excuse me.
That's
Um,
it.
I think that's a very good point you made. But you have to excuse me, look out for these buys. But
With the level up from the action there, like you were saying, I think that the bike can be a threatening thing, but I think that as long as you are able to just bait out one later on, there's a chance that you can just make the buy inefficient. Although the Earth Revolution does get used here, so getting that out of the way, I think a little bit earlier maybe, but it's still a card that may get value later on as well.
Yeah, what I was going to try and bring up before my cough took the better of me was that he's gonna try and Yoda's potentially just gonna eat all of this damage and just lose all of his board um in return for being able to play this glorious revolution, because the only time he can really play it is on an off turn when nothing bad could happen, or something has already happened and nothing really needed to be used in response. Like that last turn, he was able to, kind of just eat the damage, lose some of his weaker units, and then be able to play this glorious revolution basically for free, because Void had already attacked, Void had already spent all his mana, and now he has really way stronger cards. They're all cheaper. They're all augment. They're all this fun stuff that is just going to keep getting stronger as the game goes on.
Yeah, and making it harder for Boyd to get better decisions later on. Obviously, the buy is still not out yet, so that's at least something positive for Boyd. But as soon as it's out and then the Ezreal comes, like the buy is
Like right now.
super strong at this point. Yeah, now it's out. She's really strong at this point, even without level up.
Yeah. I mean, 10 damage is a ton. The only downside is that she doesn't have quick attack. Obviously something that would help her out a ton as far as the survivability aspect goes, but it reduces a lot of her potential targets right now. She can really only go for like weak champions, or champions that would die easily, or excuse me, units that would die easily. Something that could protect her when she goes to attack. Kind of interesting that she opted to not go for the attack onto like even the fleet feather tracker, but it makes a lot of sense knowing what warlord decks usually entail, which is like like we see in his hand, absolvers, shaped stones. All these cards could make it so that anything is a threat to the buy.
Yeah, super strengthening cards now. Super just powerful resources that you can use to not only buff yourself but deny the enemy. So overall, I do agree that you have to be careful a little bit with that. You have to be careful about how you play around with that buy, because it is one of your main points in this deck. He does have one in hand still, so it's not like risking this one it's going to be the end of the world. But it is important to try and if you're going to lose this buy, bait as much as possible, right?
And I mean, it's definitely not a good place to be in. And now we've seen Void though show his hand. He's used the absolver. He's used the overwhelm aspect of the card as well. So Sivir is going to lead the attack, and then Action is going to go do so as well. And I think he was looking at the Oracle's Eye, noticed that it would be lethal. I mean, I didn't get enough time to do the math yet, but
The quick
it,
maths.
it didn't look too good. I mean, everything was going to have overwhelm by the end of that attack, and there wasn't enough health in Yoda's units to survive that. But aside from that, I think he was in a good position to try and turn it around. It's just the warlords ramped up too quickly for him to be able to answer it.
Yeah, and that's the kind of risk that you always go against with the Warriors. It's how quick can they ramp up with the Sivir and the action, and how well can you answer that. I think that there was good places that Yoda was looking for to answer it. I think that the buy was stacking to be a really strong unit, but I think that the way that Boyd cleared some of the board previously with taking away the Ezreal as well made it so strong. Because even though the Glorious Revolution came through, it, and made the cards cheaper, it didn't really got that much value because he never got a chance to actually use them. So I
Hmm.
like the idea from Yoda. It's sadly that the ramping up from the Warlords was way stronger than he could have expected or he could have battled back, and he ends up paying the price for that. Now going into game three, last game of the series, last game of the tournament, championship point. Whoever wins everything. It's going to be Zion Draven, one that I've wanted to see against the this by Israel again, right?
Hmm. Yeah, this is the Israel Vi deck again. Curious Shellfolk is part of that whole fun stuff. Stealing
Mechanic.
cards from the other player while you're pranking them. Um, I've actually had experience playing into this exact matchup as the Draven Scion. It was not fun at all because the other player was able to set up the Curious Shellfolk and get like 8 pranks off in one turn. They basically
Oh.
just stole my deck and used it against me at that point, and I was out of cards, so it was not fun experience for me. But maybe we'll be able to see Yoda get that same sort of effect. Looking at Void's hand, though, he's off to a pretty good start. He has, the Boom Baboon. He has Scion and Draven. He's played the Twin Blade Revenant now, which just recently was nerfed from a Challenger card to a Fearsome card, which I don't really understand why you need Fearsome. Like, give him a different keyword. Fearsome's kind of a joke. But Yoda's hand overall, I don't think is too good right now. I mean, it has the Shell Folk, and he's just pulled the Ezreal, but there's not that much time right now. I mean, Void doesn't have the best hand, but he still has stuff that can start threatening the nexus of Yoda.
Yeah, I think that the problem that Yoda may face is the time that he may need to be able to begin setting up. It's not something that Void may give him. Although nice deny onto the Ezra onto the Draven, taking him out of the field already. But I still feel like it's still the same threat in the sense that it may just not be enough time for Yoda to set up for something better. Although two Shelfo getting picked.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the nerfs that came to the Draven Scion deck in this recent little patch that they did where they buffed dragons as well was they nerfed like the survivability of a lot of the cards or the overpower or not overpower like the strong keywords that they had like the Twin Blade Revenant having Challenger now having Fearsome, Draven losing one of his healths with which makes him like a subject of this like at risk of missing shot, at risk of the some fumes, at risk of so many other cards that came out that now do like 2 damage, which is just not a good place to be if you're a champion like Draven. You want to stay on the board.
Yeah, you ideally don't want to die as early as he did. But luckily, I think that for the Draven to die that early wasn't the worst either. The Scion does get put out as well now with the level up. Strong that is a really important strong card to get out, and I don't think there's much answers from Unhelpful Yoda to go for this. The stun is going to be important here though.
Yeah, he does have the Crescent Strike, which should at least stave it off for this round. The only thing he has to watch out for is that the Scion is on the board now. Like there's no going back.
Yeah.
Like you can kill it, but then you still have to deal with 10 damage as an attack because it does give you rally. Um like looking at his hand, there's really not much to go for. Like the most you can do is try and kill it and then thermo it on the next turn, but you really don't have that much stuff to kill it with without taking a huge chunk of damage. Like the Shellfolk has some health, it doesn't have enough but it doesn't have enough damage to kill the Scion on its attack. It can
Yeah.
only weaken it.
And even if you weaken it, it's just buying enough time for that for later on getting attacked once again. So it's a hard situation for Yoda, but I think he has been able to he has been able to fill up his hand a little bit more, but there's no real true answer to the Scion right now. And look,
And he opted to go for only Ottopuses so that he has these 0 cost cards that are giving him like attune, but with this the fierce or the murderous flock there's no more Shellfolk, so he's not going to be able to do a lot of this cheesy stuff that the Shellfolk is known for where you prank the other person and then you ruin their card with some zany thing and then you take a copy for yourself, which could have been very strong, you know, taking one of these Twin Blade Revenants and just creating a regenerative card in your hand, you know, getting that Twin Blade Revenant and then getting the Lost Soul afterwards and then keeping that cycle going.
yeah, I think that Boyd played around that really well, denying the potential there to just get stuck in the cycle that you're mentioning. So I think playing around that really well, and Yoda still in a unlucky situation. I don't want to say dire because it's not that bad yet, at least, but it's an unlucky situation where if he had a something better in his hand that he could try and force the Scion onto, would have been a better situation overall. It is at least an attack that will force damage on the Nexus, though.
Yeah, it'll definitely force damage on the Nexus. The only thing that like needs to like I keep thinking about like he doesn't have the thermogenic beam now either. The thermogenic beam was the best chance for him to clear the Scion either before it attacks or afterwards. But now that he's used that to clear the Twin Blade Revenant, it doesn't really matter because we're gonna see another one get dropped right now. Like there's nothing really left in hand to deal with the the huge board that Void now has.
And he does have lethal with this attack. Like there's lethal with this attack, so Angel Yoda needs to be able to deny some of these cards at least to force another two turns for himself, which he
Yeah,
has been able to do a nice job.
yeah, and Yoda clearing out these cards is helping to stall out this lethal. He does have the ability to block at least 8 of the damage now, losing when
Yeah.
he now that he's killed that fearsome. But the question is like, what do you do? You're still gonna eat 10 damage from the Scion. Do you have enough like cards in your hand, cards that you can create with the hidden pathways or otherwise to whittle down Void from 13 Nexus health? Like you have to do that in the next turn. You have to do that
Yeah.
between now and then the next time Void gets the attack token, because then otherwise you're just going to lose.
Yeah, so it's essentially such a hard spot for Yoda. It is not impossible if he does pull out something that can blow out this Scion, but like you're saying, without anything on hand that truthfully can help with that, it's going to be super hard. And I'm also surprised that he didn't try and block with the Ezreal, even though I don't think he would have. I think there's nothing to risk the Ezreal trying to block one of the cards in the previous attack. I think that the Scion still gets the complete full damage. There's no. I don't think you'd risk anything dying there.
I think I think the what he was worried about is because he knows that there's a twirling blade in Void's hand, and that could have been given to any of the either of the Zonite Urchins to give it lethal on the Ezreal, and just having the Ezreal on the board is the only way you win this right now. And since Yoda knows the whole hand, Void's whole hand, then like there's there's no really
After
reason
looking
to
at it.
like gamble.
Oh,
The mini morph.
there it is. Okay, I was thinking that if there was a mini morph, there's a chance that he can pull it off, and he actually does get it.
Yeah, I was waiting. I was waiting to bring it up. Like I was like, oh man, he hasn't pulled the mini morph. I was thinking about it earlier, but no, the mini morph is actually just how you win this game. The mini morph will shut down this Scion, basically making it useless. Well, not basically, it is making it
Yeah,
useless. Um, the only thing to really think about is like, how do you whittle down the Nexus from 7? So he has Mystic Shot, that's 2. He has the the Death Ray from well, just the Death Ray from Victor in hand. So that's 2, and then he has Nexus Shot, that's 2. It's 3 more damage on the next. So he needs to find a way to find one more spell damage. The mini morph is gonna do 1. So this is 2. This will put the Nexus at 2 health between the Mystic Shot and Ezreal.
and the Israel, yeah.
And then the mini morph will put it at 1 health. He needs to pull 1 burst or fast spell next turn. That's not a burst or fast.
Yeah.
He can. So the only thing he can do is shut down the Scion with mini morph, and then block the rest of these cards, keeping the. Oh
Oh
wait,
wait,
no, the
he
mini
actually
morph does it.
no, yeah, the mid was two. I was thinking, isn't it two? Actually, the damage that he has been doing
No,
is yeah.
actually it's 2.
My
Wow.
my
All
maths
right.
my maths were off. It's okay,
Oh
but he
yeah.
actually does pull it off in the end. The mini morph coming in clutch. I always tell you that card is good. It's the cute author that ends up winning. So hey,
I
full
didn't say.
credit.
I don't think it's bad. I think it's too good. I think it's oppressive, not enjoyable to play against. But yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's definitely my bad. I keep trying to I keep trying to do the math, and I forget that it's a spell that you cast is 1, and a spell that targets an enemy is 2. But I thought I kept mixing up with it a spell that damages an enemy. But
I
enough of
was thinking
my confusion.
it's okay. My quick maths were wrong as well, so it's okay. Both of us were wrong, but at the end, the one that wasn't wrong was Yoda. What a nice way
Mhm.
to turn it around because it was such a hard situation for himself. He was big against the wall with the Silent Raven almost being able to destroy him at that point. But I think that he
Mhm.
played that so well, waiting the time, playing the buy Israel like he should with the calmness, the correct plays overall. It was so well done at the end. I think that fully deserving of this of the championship being the winner of tonight. Great job. And we will have an interview as soon as we are able to unmute him. He will be able to answer. By the way, yeah, now we have it. We will have an interview with him. Welcome, Yoda. Congratulations on winning. Congratulations on being able to achieve the tournament. It was really well played overall. And we have some uh, things to say about you, with you about your decks and some other things. But first of all, any words that you want to say right now? Yoda?
Yoda, Yoda, are you there?
I think he's here, but I know he is here certainly, but he's not speaking yet, so I'm not 100% sure what is going on. We will try uh to work this out quickly. So I guess sending it quick to a quick pause and then coming back would be the most ideal thing. Thank you for not leaving after that short break. We wanted to have we there was going to be an interview, but some complications happened. Sadly, we cannot talk with Yoda. But still, congratulations on winning. Congratulations on performing so well, showcasing so many good matches. I think we streamed two on in the channel. So overall, greatly played. You did win with one of the decks that we didn't like overall. So there's that little bit of salt spray on there, but it was still such a fun experience. I was really glad to be back into casting one of these LoR tournaments. It was so enjoyable, so many good players playing. It's great.
Yeah, congratulations to Yoda. You brought some stuff that was pretty interesting. You brought the spice, and you made it work. You took it home, got the win in both matches. Played pretty much insanely good games. Some of them didn't look too good. Some of them were ice or shaky, but you pulled it out. You came through and got the win. So congratulations.
Yep, 100%. With that, we are now going into the closing of the tournament. It was a pleasure having everyone watching the tournament. It was a pleasure being able to cast with you, Dom, as always. It was always fun. I don't know much. I showcased my lack of knowledge some of the times, but you most of the time carry this cast with your knowledge. So as always, it's great being with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining with me again, TDS. It's always a pleasure. But yeah, thanks for everyone for tuning in. Congratulations once again to Yoda.
And with that, we're calling it a night. Thanks for watching. See you next time we have a tournament. If not on the league, I'm not 100% sure. I need to talk with this with Hirsch. But anyways, thank you for the nice. Good night.